The protagonist's name is Yu Ilshin. He is a web novel author. Inside a sort of cafe, he seems bored because he has no idea what to write and the deadline is tomorrow. Suddenly, he looks to the side and sees his phone. Stammering, he remarks that he should organize the apps he doesn't use. Then, as he picks up his phone, he notices a mysterious app. He wonders if he installed it at some point. Upon clicking the app in question, he realizes it's a game. The game welcomes him as the creator of gods. Inside the game, he sees an ant. A scream of strange language appears, and he cannot read what it says, wondering what kind of game this is. Confused, he thinks he should at least try pressing something. With a curious gaze, he decides to test the game. It might be hard for those following this story to understand, but this is how the protagonist ended up taking a break. Sometime later, he is in another world, facing several monstrous ants. He raises his hand high, pointing his index finger. A lightning bolt shoots directly from his finger, as if it were some kind of power. He uses the ability God's Smashing Index Finger. Using this ability, he manages to electrocute several ants simultaneously. Behind him, some sort of giant ant appears. It seems to be a type of boss that completely destroys the ground. When the smoke clears, the protagonist is no longer in the same spot. Floating, the boy prepares to use another special ability with his index finger. Then he unleashes God's Condemning Middle Finger. This previous ability is of the fire element and burns all the ants in front of him. After this massacre, he lands softly on the ground. At this moment, he notices he has a cut on his face. With his ring finger, he uses the healing ability, God's Healing Ring Finger, to recover. However, at that moment, another even larger monster appears, resembling some kind of demonic centipede. Without any fear, the boy begins to summon some kind of magical sword. In fury, the monster roars and charges toward him. The protagonist also attacks using his magical sword. In the boy's room, no one is sitting in his chair. His laptop is on as if he had, by chance, gone to some other world. And this is the story of how he ended up taking a break against his will. Afterward, many people began commenting online that the author was pausing his work to play a strange game. They even sent him an email asking if he could at least return later to save the world. Thus begins the serialization. One fine day, dungeon portals began opening and demonic beasts emerged from them. Soon, a calamity struck all of humanity. However, with the appearance of hunters who had awakened their abilities, the calamity turned into an opportunity. From the demonic beasts they hunted, divine energy and divine materials were collected, which brought new hope to humanity. Thus, hunters were divided into classes, ranging from SSS to G. The abilities of a class G were technically no different from those of a normal human. Once hunter classes were defined, there was basically no possibility of changing them. A girl in a school uniform walks past a poster of a hunter. She simply observes it in silence. Then she ignores it, not looking very happy. She is carrying a re-evaluation and class assessment form. Her class is B+, and she mentions this is already her 10th test. Frustrated, she wonders if all of her training was ultimately useless. At that moment, someone approaches and asks if she feels anything crawling. With a confident expression, she turns around, wondering if the person asking for her number is an indication of her incomparable popularity. Nervously, the protagonist tells her not to misunderstand, explaining that he's not usually that kind of person. Somewhat irritated, while conjuring a sort of lightning power in her left hand, she wonders if he is some kind of pervert. Unaware of the girl's murderous intent, he simply apologizes, saying he has a call to answer. Desperately, he shouts, "Excuse me," says he has a call, and runs away from the scene, embarrassed. This is number 49, Seong Myrim, who questions who this guy is. Suddenly, the receptionist calls her, asking her to head to the exam room. In this room, they hand her the results. Outside the building, she begins analyzing them. She sees that her class is still B+. Disappointed with herself, she realizes she still hasn't surpassed Class B. Carrying a silent sadness, she thinks she cannot break the class limit. While holding her phone, she notices something strange. It's an emergency alert indicating that a portal has appeared in Seoul and from it emerged an A-class spike bull. A call is made for nearby hunters ranked A or above. Concerned, she realizes that the monster in question is a spiked bull. Meanwhile, a reporter states that she is in the middle of a parking lot where a demonic beast suddenly appeared and warns that hunters have yet to arrive. According to current information, the demonic beast is the spiked bull, and if true, they are facing a monster capable of destroying a city. Amid the chaos, Yu is running alongside a little girl, but she trips and falls hard to the ground. Worried, he helps her up, calling her by name, Seong Guyon, and asking if she's okay. At that moment, they notice something approaching. Behind him, the demonic beast in question appears. Both he and the little girl are extremely worried and brace for the worst. However, a devastating strike hits the monster. Number 49 appears, wearing some sort of motorcycle helmet. The attack catches the demonic monster's attention, causing it to look up. Nervously, she realizes that her attack had no effect. Gathering more energy, she prepares for her next strike. Then she launches the lightning storm again, this time with even more power. After the attack, she lands on the ground. Distressed, she wonders if she finally managed to hit it. From within the smoke, only 2 red eyes can be seen. The monster is even more furious, and it seems the attack had no effect, leaving it completely unharmed. The demonic bull charges toward the girl, who must defend herself. It slams into the ground with such force that she is thrown far away. The impact is strong enough to leave Seong on the ground. Her body, already battered, can barely move. Frustrated, she realizes that an A-class beast is on a completely different level. Looking to the side, she grows even more anxious, noticing there are still people in the area. The demonic bull still appears very angry. Analyzing the situation, the girl realizes it's dangerous. Biting her lip, she feels helpless, unable to think of any solutions. Determined, she gets up and tells them to run now. She states she doesn't know how long she can hold on, so they should leave immediately. Before she can finish, the demonic bull launches another attack in her direction. Irritated, she tells herself she needs to buy some time. But looking at her hand, she notices her power is weakening. The demonic bull is filled with rage and continues glaring. As she stares at the giant monster in front of her, memories of her parents surface. A flashback reveals the girl kneeling amid rubble. She declares she won't let this happen. Crying, she vows to destroy everything. At that moment, a woman's voice calls out to her, explaining that she should never dream of revenge. Returning to the present, the girl is so enraged that she clenches her teeth and tells the monster not to mess with her. Determined, she prepares for another lightning storm attack. However, she suddenly hears someone say, "God's smashing index finger." The phrase echoes in her mind. Instead of only using her hand for the attack, she begins channeling power through her entire body. In fury, she releases all the energy she can muster from head to toe. The electricity is so intense that her pupils nearly disappear. After gathering such immense energy, she channels it into a single sphere. Throwing it at the giant monster, she uses her ultimate ability, Lightning Storm, at full power. The attack is so strong that a massive explosion of electricity can be seen from afar. It is reported that a B-class hunter, the Thunder Empress, has defeated an A-class demonic beast, and everyone thanks her. Many people begin to revere her, even asking for autographs, and amid the chaos, the reporter announces that the Thunder Empress defeated the Spiked Bull. Looking at her hands in disbelief, she realizes she actually defeated the Spiked Bull. Suspicious, she wonders what just happened. Staring at the deformed monster, she understands that it's as if she had surpassed her own limits. Suddenly, the protagonist appears with his little sister, thanking her. He asks how he can repay this debt, but she tells him it's fine. She says she's just happy they're safe, and the boy expresses his gratitude. Then both leave. However, as they walk away, the girl notices something. She questions how he knew her name and realizes no one should know she is the Thunder Empress. She recalls the phrase God's index finger and realizes she heard his voice in her head. Meanwhile, the protagonist simply tells his sister that they should head home. Confused, number 49 wonders who that guy is. This place is one of the points where people most often log out of the game of life, and he declares that he's not here to die. In fact, it's the opposite. The boy could have died, and not just him, his niece as well. Remembering what happened with the spiked terror, he blames everything on his phone. As he prepares to throw it away, he calls it a cursed, stupid phone. Going back a few days, the boy was discovering the ant game. Confused, he wonders if he should press the buttons randomly. Pressing the buttons, he notices that one of the ants dies. Suddenly, a real coin pops out of the phone. The solid coin hits the hero in the head. Hearing this, he becomes extremely confused. The game informs him that number 1 was crushed to death, and as a reward, he receives a shadowy gold coin. Congratulating him, the game declares he's one step closer to becoming an evil god full of power who rules through force. Reading this, he's completely bewildered, unsure of what to do. At that moment, he wonders if he has just awakened a hunter's ability. 20 years ago, if something like this had happened, he would have sought a psychiatrist or perhaps a shaman. But the world has changed. Back at the building, they call for number 369, Yahello. In the background, people begin laughing at his name, while the boy feels embarrassed, thinking she should have just called him by his surname. Smiling, the receptionist congratulates him, saying that his aptitude test results show he has gained abilities. Hearing this, the protagonist is utterly shocked. Thinking about his future, he tells himself he wasn't aiming for an A rank, but at least an E rank, so he could quit writing novels and become a hunter. At that moment, the woman informs him that he is a G rank. Hearing this response, Yu becomes completely disheartened. Handing him a sheet, the woman explains that, as he can see, his ability is matter creation. Holding the sheet, the hero questions if being a G rank makes him practically a regular civilian. Confirming the information, she says he is a G rank and asks if he would like to register for a license. The protagonist then asks how much it costs. In response, the woman informs him it's 280,000 won. Shocked, he promptly refuses, wondering why he would waste that money since, as a G rank, he can't enter any dungeon. Disheartened, he thinks he should go home to work on his chapter before Web9's manager starts pestering him. At home, he starts writing his text. However, he's completely fixated on the screen. Looking to the side, he realizes it's 2 a.m. and wonders what he has been doing for the past 5 hours, typing and deleting. Grabbing his remote control, he wonders if it's better to take a moment to clear his head. On the news, it's reported that S-Class Hunter Bak attacked a disaster-ranked dungeon and successfully completed the mission. This brings humanity one step closer to salvation. Captivating as a fatal temptation, an item that S-Class Hunter Seong Mina always carries into dungeons is highlighted. It's described as the only choice for protecting her skin. Completely frustrated, Yu turns off the TV, complaining that in another place it's better to have successful hunters. Lying in bed, he declares he hates seeing them. Then he decides to take a nap and write later with a clear head. However, his phone starts ringing. It keeps ringing for 2 long minutes. Annoyed, the protagonist tries to ignore it, but he can't and ends up waking up. Frustrated, he shouts about the problem with his stupid alarm and wonders why it keeps ringing without stopping. It turns out to be a notification from the game, specifically from that strange engagement. Several coins start popping out of his phone as he kills the ants. Furious, he begins hitting the ants repeatedly, while more and more coins emerge from his phone. Irritated, he curses the ants, declaring he will defeat them. The next day at home, Yu wakes up. Sitting on his bed, he wonders where his pile of coins went. Until then, he had at least a few hundred. Picking up one of the coins, he notices that the small ones used to have 1, but this one says 100. Again, his phone starts ringing. This time, the system congratulates him in his language, calling him a known god and notifying him that he has fulfilled the requirements to open the god's shop. He's given the option to open it, yes or no. At that moment, he gets an idea. With an excited smile, he declares that curiosity killed the author. Without hesitation, he selects yes. However, at that moment, his phone begins acting strangely. Meanwhile, in an important meeting involving figures from the political and business worlds, someone thanks the president and the head of the Hunters Association. They state that their nation now has a hunter who has opened their hunter's shop. Excited, someone asks if this is one of the rare abilities that awaken even among creation-type hunters. Clapping his hands, a man asks for someone else to enter. It's a woman who appears very powerful. This is the S-Class creation hunter, Mr. Kang Yu, who unlocked the hunter's shop. And this is the S-Class telepathic hunter, Seon Mina, who is here to clarify doubts. Both are warmly welcomed by everyone. However, the president of South Korea, Jung Hwan, does not seem very pleased. Nervously, Jokus asks the two guests to help manifest the hunter's shop. Upon hearing this request, everyone in the meeting becomes excited. Suddenly, Kang Yu begins activating some kind of ability. Witnessing this, everyone in the room is startled. A man with glasses asks if everyone is okay. At that moment, the president starts speaking, saying that apart from the commotion, he doesn't see anything. Jokus then tells everyone to remain calm, explaining that it's normal for only the person who activated the shop to be able to see it. He explains that they will use Seong Mina's telepathic ability to show everyone the shop that only the hunter can see. At that moment, the woman uses her telepathic abilities. This is the hunter's shop, displaying items like potions, the Great Holy Sword, God's Thunderous Blessing, and others. The items range from consumables to weapons, all with varying prices. Excited, a man exclaims that these are items he has only heard about in myths and legends. Someone mentions that God's Thunderous Blessing costs 3 trillion won. A colleague comments that it would be a bargain considering the strength of such an ability. In the background, the president interrupts, calling everyone's attention. With a serious expression, he instructs them to keep this information in their minds. Nervously, he explains that the country's fate depends on it, and therefore, they must keep it a secret until the project is fully operational. He informs Mr. Kang Yu that he will need at least 2 S-Class hunters as bodyguards. Hearing this, the woman silently observes. At the same time, regarding the protagonist, the system informs him that he has fulfilled all the requirements to activate the god's shop. As we've seen before, he decides to click yes. Afterward, the game says that to activate the god's shop, he needs 100 coins and asks if he wants to use them. He agrees. Looking to the side, he notices that one of the 100 value coins disappears. He thinks that so far, these strange coins keep appearing and wonders if it might be creation-related, just like Kang Yu, the hunter. He understands that the difference between Kang Yu, an S-Class, and himself, a G-Class, is like heaven and earth, but perhaps he can make some money. Seeing the hunter's shop, he realizes he can only read the prices and the total gold he has, but nothing about the names of the abilities. Nervously, he begins examining the prices of everything. Suddenly, his phone starts glowing intensely. Disheartened, he remembers that after an entire night, he only managed to gather 300 coins and questions why these items are so expensive. However, the hunter's shop begins moving on its own. Looking at the price of an item costing 100 coins, he notices it moves on its own and stops abruptly. Uneasy, he wonders if the shop is prompting him to buy this item. Without overthinking, he ends up purchasing the God's Blind Eye, a unique authority. Reading the item's name, he wonders what the blind eye is for. At that moment, the boy loses his vision completely. Terrified, he falls backward, dropping his phone as he clutches his eyes. You cannot see anything and questions what's happening, wondering if he has gone blind. He considers calling for emergency services, but doesn't know where his phone is. He ends up stubbing his toe on something. Falling to the ground, he begins crying desperately. But just then, he realizes he can see again. Breathing a sigh of relief, he reflects on the immense scare he just experienced. Picking up his phone, he notices he can now read the words. Every item has long, elaborate names. One in particular catches his attention. It is the creation of heaven and earth transcendent God. He wonders how much it costs and what it feels like to be a protagonist of a webcomic. Exhausted, he remarks that G-Class people are meant to live like this until the end, and that S-Class individuals should do the same, though he's sure there are exceptions. At that moment, he notices something strange. Curious about it all, he wonders if there's anything else he can buy. To satisfy his curiosity, he decides to take another look at the shop. He notices the god's smashing index finger and sees that it seems quite powerful. Looking to the side, he spots a 100 coin piece and thinks he might as well buy it, as it's the only item he can afford. Without hesitation, he decides to purchase it. Sensationally, the system notifies him that he has acquired the god's smashing index finger, a shared authority. Looking at his index finger, he wonders if this is a skill and what the god's smashing index finger actually does. At that moment, something clicks in his mind. He starts repeating the phrase over and over, God's smashing index finger. The boy repeats the phrase several times while pointing at the air conditioner. Excited, he repeats it again, this time pointing at the television broadcasting today's weather forecast. At this point, he realizes it's not working. He speculates that this ability might work like a remote control. He keeps trying to use this power. Finally, he points at his laptop while repeating the same phrase. Exhausted, he sits in his chair, remarking that, as expected, a novel will write itself. Looking back, he notices someone is calling him. It's a call from the almighty director. A little nervous, he answers. On the other end of the line, the man is impressed, saying what the boy submitted was entertaining. Visibly shocked and confused, the protagonist thinks he only wrote about killing a few ants for a few days and wonders if that was really entertaining. Stammering, he asks if the director is serious and internally questions why that would be fun. Explaining, the man says the plot is unique and has so much potential, but unfortunately, there's a big problem. The protagonist immediately says he'll fix it right away. The man clarifies that the problem is there's no next chapter. He comments that it's incredible and asks when the next chapter will be released. Annoyed, he realizes this nonsense startled him for nothing. Responding to his boss, he says he'll write and send it in 2 days. Impressed, the man says he wasn't expecting much, but now he's very excited. After the call, the boy realizes that killing these ants makes for good content. As he continues playing, he tells the ants he holds no grudge against them. He explains that he's just working on his new novel. After some time playing, several coins start falling to the ground. They begin merging as if fusing into a single coin. Transforming into a single 100-coin piece, the protagonist, surprised, realizes this is how they combine. Picking it up from the ground, he remarks that he now has 100 coins. Looking at his phone, he notices he's still far from being able to buy any item and wonders what to do, given that even the cheapest items cost at least 1,000 coins. He then sees the blessing of growth from the lowest god item and wonders if it might be better than a useless authority. Excited, he declares that the word growth makes his heart race, and that he'll quickly gather 1,000 coins to buy it. Eager, the boy continues playing for a long time. At this point, the system notifies him in a strange language. While playing, he wonders why this particular ant won't die. He tries to hit it several times but fails. Analyzing the situation, he realizes this ant is different from the others. He wonders if it's the boss. Completely out of his mind, he puts all his effort into killing the creature, but it keeps dodging. Frustrated, Yu remarks that this is infuriating. In fury, he declares he'll show off the rhythm game skills he acquired from his Guitar Hero days. As he continues playing, the system keeps sending notifications. Completely drenched in sweat, he stares at the screen without blinking. Perplexed, he realizes he still hasn't succeeded. He wonders how this stupid ant can be so fast. Yu becomes increasingly irritated. The red ant is still alive. Losing his temper, he shouts that he'll kill the rest of them if that's the case. Sometime later, the system notifies him that number 801 has been crushed to death. It also informs him that the karma value of an unknown god has surpassed 800. Examples of karma remaining until achieving the title of evil god of power and aggression are displayed. It's 3 a.m. and the game announces he can receive a reward for earning the title. Unable to keep playing, the protagonist collapses onto his bed. Meanwhile, the game declares that the unique authority, God's blind eye, has been activated. The god of an unknown name is pursuing the unattained sacrifice number 404. Sometime later, in what appears to be a movie theater, the session is completely empty. Desperate, the protagonist wakes up, wondering what kind of place this is and if there's anyone around. Confused, he questions whether this might actually be a movie theater. Suddenly, a bright flash of light appears beside him. When he realizes what it is, the boy widens his eyes in shock. In front of the giant movie screen, he keeps watching. His expression resembles that of a zombie or a living corpse. Someone is wandering through barren lands, questioning whether this is the power of the god of the dark tribe. They state that this god tried to kill them by sacrificing his followers. His depravity makes him seem more like a demon than a god. That figure turns out to be Ant, who states there's no time left and that it must warn its companions. The figure is walking alone through the desert. It stops in front of what appears to be entrance to its home. The red ant is completely exhausted and drenched in sweat. It starts coughing up blood. It seems like it can't hold on much longer. Despite the pain, it decides to keep moving forward and enters the place. Sometime later, the ant is eating some strange food. While it eats, its eyes burn with immense fury. After the meal, it heads to a place resembling a dining hall. All the red ants look surprised to see it. The figure shouts, informing them that it has discovered where the black tribe's food flowed to, and that they were annihilated by the god of the tribe, who is a monstrous beast, barely escaping with its life. At this, all the ants in the dining hall fall silent. Then they start laughing, calling a coward a disgrace to the great empire, and saying that if it was defeated by its own food, it should have died there. At that moment, someone demands silence. Hearing this voice, all the ants immediately rise. It's some sort of elder ant. Kneeling, the figure calls him the Great Shaman. This is Lord number 808 of the Dawn. The elder states that he felt the presence of the evil being that number 464 mentioned earlier. He declares that the figure is telling the truth, causing the ant to blush. Raising his voice, he announces that this is now the territory of His Majesty, the Great Emperor, an evil god, and in such sacred lands it must be eliminated immediately. Almost in tears, the ant is moved, saying that the sage believes in it. At that moment, the elder places his hand on the head of his follower. Using some kind of power, he declares that he wishes nature to be with him. Stammering, Ant 404 realizes its wounds are gone. The shaman calls the brave soldier, instructing him to lead. He announces that he will personally deal with the evil spirit. Excited, everyone starts shouting that they will help. They chant that the evil spirit must die. Suddenly, he wakes up wondering what that was. As he gets up, he comments that it felt very real. Caught in a paradox, he questions whether he dreamed of the ants or if an ant dreamed of him. His phone then notifies him about numbers 404 and 808. Picking up his phone, he realizes it's that cursed ant again. Enraged, he declares that this time he will definitely kill it. However, the game informs him that nature must deny evil. Shocked, the protagonist realizes he just saw that bearded ant in his dream. Suddenly, his phone begins glowing blue. It strikes him on the forehead. After taking the hit, the boy is stunned. Quickly, he becomes confused about what just happened. Apparently, the attack was made by the Elder. With a murderous aura, the Elder declares that nature must deny all evil. Then he strikes the boy again. Yu covers his face with his hands, screaming. In the background, the Elder's followers cheer, saying he is undoubtedly a sage. One adds that he achieved a great feat, and that His Majesty will be very pleased. Another suggests that he might have another sacred dream at this expedition's banquet. And number 404 congratulates the sage while the old man starts trembling. Stammering and terrified, he orders everyone to flee. The Elder is quickly struck by a lightning bolt. One of the ants points upward, declaring that it's coming again. Suddenly, everyone starts being annihilated one by one. Yu is so enraged that he begins punching his phone repeatedly, and the system reports that number 404 is subject to a violent death. It also states that number 808 is subject to a violent death as well. Yu is so infuriated by it all that he punches the phone until it breaks. Meanwhile, the game continues reporting that several ants are subject to violent deaths. After all those punches, the hero is left confused. Regretfully, he picks up his phone and starts crying, lamenting that it's completely destroyed. However, the game congratulates him, announcing that he has received the title of Evil God. After crying profusely over his broken phone, the protagonist begins to realize all the achievements he has gained. With his face bruised, he notices something different. The game notifies him that the karma of known gods has reached 1,000. It congratulates him as he has earned the title of God of Evil. The title Brutal Assassin is granted after evil karma exceeds 1,000, and with the effect of the unknown god title, his combat luck increases. This is essentially a title for surpassing 1,000 karma. Hearing terms like Brutal Assassin and God of Evil, the boy thinks to himself that he's still a good person, despite it all. Looking at the ground, he sees several 100 coin pieces and remarks how they've accumulated. Among the coins, there's some sort of ring. Examining the object, Yu wonders what it is. However, something about it catches his attention. It's the scent, which he describes as incredible. Excited, he declares that his mind feels clearer. He decides to try it on. As he puts on the ring, he feels some kind of energy manifesting in his body. Smiling, he remarks that it feels like he has a completely new body as all his fatigue disappears. Even though his phone is cracked, it still works, and the game notifies him of something. It's about the unique authority of the blind eye of God, which has been activated and is analyzing the ring. After a few seconds, the ring's analysis is complete. It is identified as the druid's ring number 808, passed down by the god of eternity, containing the life of the forest within it, with attributes that enhance various abilities. You didn't expect things to turn out this way and wonders if it works on other objects as well. Facing the TV, he attempts to use his power. Concentrating hard, he activates the system, which notifies him that the unique authority of the blind eye of God is being used. Recognizing the TV, it states that it's the boy's STV, used for 1 year, and that its specialty is having 3 months of warranty left. Analyzing his laptop, the system notes it's been used for 1 year and 2 months, and its specialty is 6 months of remaining warranty. When analyzing his bed, the system informs him that the old bed has been used for over 10 years, and its specialty is that he should throw it away. After analyzing several objects in his room, he wonders if he should stop for now. Sweating profusely, he feels like he's truly grasping reality in this moment. Suddenly, he notices something different. Thinking it through, he declares that with an item like this ring and his new analysis power, he's only a G rank in name. Excited, he states that if anyone saw even one of the rings he made, they'd never classify him as G rank. He decides they need to return to the Paranormal Phenomena Center. Sometime later, the protagonist requests a revaluation. Confused, the receptionist explains that the margin of error in evaluations is less than 1% and questions whether he really wants to be reevaluated. Smiling, he confirms, saying he absolutely does. In this case, the first test is covered by the country. However, this revaluation will cost over 1.5 million won, and the woman asks if he'll pay in cash or by card. She mentions that there's a coup, so he needs to decide quickly. Nervously, he wonders if the best he'll get is F rank and apologizes to the woman, saying he'll come back next time. As he leaves, he feels defeated and thinks he should have researched whether there was a revaluation fee, as he got too excited over the ring. Sitting down, he reflects that he should be writing instead and admits he went a little crazy. Walking around, he observes that there really are a lot of people there for evaluations. He decides he needs to snap out of it and write something to submit. Then he wonders if there's anything he can write about this place. Suddenly, the system informs him it's analyzing targets using the unique authority of the blind eye of God, and the protagonist realizes it works on people too. Analyzing a man, he discovers the man is 30 years old and specializes in hemorrhoids, questioning if that's really true. Next, he analyzes a woman 24 years old whose specialty is pregnancy. Then he analyzes another man 41 years old whose specialty is erectile dysfunction and thinks he'll be considered a psychopath for doing this. After analyzing the 3 people without their consent, the protagonist feels somewhat uneasy. At that moment, he sees the girl who saved him earlier. This is Selling Mary, a 19-year-old woman whose specialty is being sensational. Surprised by this specialty, the girl stands up. She is the first person whose full name he can see, and he wonders why. Additionally, everything about her is captivating, and he questions what kind of specialty this could be. Feeling a bit apprehensive, he decides to approach her. His hand trembles as he tells himself to stop right there. With a nervous gaze and trembling hands, he mutters to himself that curiosity killed the author and that he should stop. Still, he walks up to the girl and politely asks for her attention. Then he asks if she is excited. Turning to face him, she leaves the boy thinking that he finally did it and that he's losing his mind. Reacting to his comment, the girl becomes extremely irritated. At that moment, a bit of power begins emanating from her left hand. Nervously, she declares that he shouldn't think of her as someone strange. Seeing her intimidating aura, he hastily explains that he isn't a weirdo while thinking he should have said something more convincing. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing and he excuses himself. Relieved, he answers the call. It's a call from the demon's sister. Seeing the contact name, he's startled. Fleeing, he apologizes, saying he needs to take this call immediately. The girl, confused and irritated, watches him leave. Sometime later, outside the building, the excited hero wonders where he should meet his beloved niece. On the other end of the line, she teases him, saying he's only happy because money is involved and tells him not to treat her like a jobless person. Arguing with her over the phone, he says he understands, hangs up, and tells her not to be late. He sighs in relief, thinking he avoided getting scolded for wasting inspiration time and wonders if he could survive long enough to write something. Later, at the park, sitting on a bench, his niece asks him a question. She asks what dark story means, while he thinks she's adorable and wonders how his demon brother could have fathered such an angel. Hearing her question about a dark story, the protagonist's expression completely changes. Disheartened, he explains that there was something like that in what he updated today. Confused, the child asks what updated means, while the boy wonders how he'll resist pinching her cheeks. Pinching the child's cheeks, he talks about updates and tells her she's incredibly cute. Annoyed, she makes him stop. Angry, she declares she hates him and complains that she's told him not to do that so many times. She asks how many more times she'll have to say it, while he apologizes. Feeling nervous, he thinks it's hard to resist her cheeks, but since she hates it, he knows she'll be grumpy for at least an hour. At that moment, a game screen appears in front of him. The game is analyzing his niece. Displaying her full name, it states that she is the protagonist's niece, a 5-year-old human female, with a note that she wants to eat a chocolate ice cream cone. Changing the subject, you asks her if she wants to have some ice cream, a delicious chocolate cone. Hearing this, the child starts drooling, clearly craving it. The ice cream vendor welcomes them and thanks them for visiting. Looking up, the niece says she wants a chocolate cone. He reassures her that it's fine and that he can pay. He gently asks for a chocolate cone. Seeing several coins on the counter, the vendor looks a bit confused. Annoyed by the coins, she asks the protagonist to wait a moment. From afar, you watches, wondering if she's really just going to serve such a measly amount. He questions if it's because he paid with coins, but reminds himself it's for the child, the future of their world. Pointing at his index finger, he declares he has his remote control. Pointing ahead, he utters the famous phrase, God's smashing index finger. Then he notices that a large amount of chocolate starts pouring onto the cone. After leaving the ice cream shop, the girl is enjoying her chocolate cone. The cone is enormous, so the protagonist asks if he can have a bite, but she promptly refuses. Disheartened, he says it's fine and that she can eat it all. Looking at the sun, he remarks that this is a peaceful day. Suddenly, his phone starts emitting some kind of alert like a warning. Concerned, Yu grabs his phone, wondering what it could be. The game notifies him that the cruel slaughter of title has been activated. During the activation, the game explains that the battle luck of the unknown god has greatly increased. Suddenly, a voice begins to echo, catching Yu's attention. The voice declares that whoever walks the path of great evil will devour even the trials they face and become the true demon god. At that moment, his ice cream drops its chocolate onto the ground. As the notification is announced, she looks at something strange. 2 red eyes appear in the sky, the entrance of the demon bull. Terrified, the protagonist declares that he's in big trouble. Fast forwarding a bit, we see Seong stating that she doesn't know how much longer she can hold on. Meanwhile, the monster keeps roaring. At this moment, Yu begins to formulate an idea. He's still extremely afraid of what's in front of him. Using his ability, the demon bull is analyzed, genderless, 400 years old, and seeking activity by devouring the unknown god. Later that night, he remembers the analysis he conducted on the bull. He recalls how the unknown god was suffering in Godmaker and wanted to confront its mind afterward, which didn't happen by coincidence. He also remembers when the girl told him to run away. On top of all this, there was a message when the demon bull was defeated. The game notified him that he had completed the trial and that cruel slaughter had ranked up. As a reward, he could acquire the authority of a low-class god without spending any coins. However, it would be limited to the exclusive demonic authority of gods. This notification appeared right after the bull was defeated. Frustrated, the hero declares that all this is happening because of his phone. Determined, he prepares to throw it away, calling it stupid. However, the phone begins to vibrate. The system sends a message, holiness god, and something else in a strange language. Reading this, the protagonist wonders about this holiness. Somewhere else, 2 guard ants are discussing the nameless god. Suddenly, one of them is struck on the head. The other guard starts crying and trembling in fear. Seeing a giant ant before it, the guard begs for mercy. A scream from outside can be heard as another ant prays to save its tribe. Hearing the scream, the praying ant also begins to tear up and tremble. At that moment, the giant red ant approaches, calling out for the dark tribe's holy maiden. It asks if she thought she could escape the imperial soldiers. With a murderous gaze, the monster begins licking its own blade. Seeing the killer aura of this creature, the ant starts to panic. On the other side of the screen, the protagonist is given a choice. Would he like to save the small creature desperately seeking his help? At this moment, he remembers the demon bull. Thinking about it, he believes it must have been in the same situation. Meanwhile, the ant is about to strike the maiden. Laughing, it mocks her, calling her the Holy Maiden of the Dark Tribe, and tells her to accept her fate with gratitude as a sacrifice for his majesty. However, before it can finish speaking, it notices something strange approaching. The monster is struck by a lightning bolt generated by the protagonist touching his phone screen. Yu comments on how large that ant is. After killing it, many coins begin dropping from his phone. The Holy Maiden wishes to know the true name of the nameless god. Stammering, the boy is taken aback. However, he ends up responding that his name is Yu Ilshin. With an admiring gaze, the Holy Maiden praises the name. Thus, the hero obtains the title of Merciful Redeemer God. Currently, he holds titles for both good and evil gods. Due to the influence of earning the title of a good god, Yu's alignment changes from evil to neutral. Additionally, as a special bonus for earning a good god title for the first time, he receives 100,000 coins, making him extremely happy. Excited, he remarks that this means he has 108,000 coins in total. Opening the hunter's shop, he wonders what he should buy. He then finds the Blessing of Growth from the low-class god item. Upon purchasing it, a vial emerges from his phone. At that moment, the system begins evaluating the item, Blessing of Growth from the low-class god. The description reveals it to be a bodily fluid shed during the training of the Seeker of the Secret Truth, now bottled. Immortals who consume it will unlock their maximum hidden potential. The more they drink, the better. Despite being described as a bodily fluid, Yu notes that it has no odor. Gathering his courage, he decides to drink it. After consuming it, he's surprised, stating that it tastes more like an energy drink. Frustrated, he curses, calling it nonsense and wondering if it's a scam. But then he notices the item's description, which states that the more he drinks, the better it will be. With his arms crossed, as distrustful as he is, he decides to try anyway. Sometime later, he took the same item several times. Frustrated, he realizes nothing is happening. Suddenly, he collapses to the ground. The Ghoul Maker's assimilation rate has increased from 0% to 5%. Yu's passive ability has strengthened, as well as the assimilation rate itself. Then sometime later, the hero wakes up. As he gets up, he notices his head is hurting. Stretching, he wonders when he got home. Then he decides to grab his phone right away. First, noticing something strange, he questions if it's a swarm. He remembers his room. Several ants are heading his way. Seeing this, the boy jumps out of bed and is notified that due to the increased assimilation rate, the Ghoul Maker battlefield has been improved. In shock, seeing these ants, he wonders what is going on. Desperate, he tries to open the door, but he can't. These ants have a demonic appearance. It really seems to be a swarm of ants as there are so many. At this moment, he notices the window in front of him. Determined, he decides to leap toward it as it's only the 3rd floor. That is to say, even if he falls, he won't die anyway. However, he is very clumsy, and while running toward the window, ends up hitting his face on it. Doing so, he falls to the floor. Nervous, he wonders if he is trapped. Suddenly, a huge rage takes over his being. The boy is deeply irritated as the ant general commands the troops to attack. However, several ants are wiped out all at once. The man then comments that he has enough power to kill General Stauge. He quickly orders the shooting troops to advance as well. At this moment, they all shoot arrows toward the boy. Successfully, they hit his body completely. Excited and laughing a lot, the ant wonders what the monster thinks about this and comments that this is the power of the Great Empire. She declares for all troops to charge and kill this monster. They must decapitate him to present his head to His Majesty, the Emperor. Tired of it all, the hero falls to his knees on the ground, saying he can't take it anymore. With his body trembling, he says he can't breathe. Despite being at rock bottom, he ends up seeing something interesting in front of him. It appears to be some kind of insecticide. Enraged, the protagonist decides what he must do. Meanwhile, one of the ants is trembling, speaking about His Majesty rejoicing and about the Empire's troops. Without ceremony, Yu is ready to exterminate all these ants at once. Seeing this power in front of her, the ant is paralyzed. As she burns, she starts to think this is definitely the power of a god. All the ants around him begin to catch fire. Disturbed, the protagonist realizes his body won't move, forgetting that he won't die like this. Miraculously, the system notifies that 2 high-class malignants are sending a gift. With nowhere else to run, the boy ends up accepting it. With this, the indicator hall begins to be enveloped in some kind of dark energy. This catches Yu's attention as he has never seen anything like it before. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the city, a great lightning bolt appears on the peak of a mountain. It is Sion, who is frustrated, saying it's no use. Because when she defeated the thorny bull, if she could awaken that power again, then revenge would no longer be a dream. Suddenly, she notices something strange happening. It seems to be very far from where she is right now. Meanwhile, back at the protagonist's house, the light is ablaze. Desperate, he says nothing is happening. The system notifies that Yu's passive skill, Silent Nightmare, is being absorbed. But the boy, irritated, says he's not absorbing anything. Without much hope, he tries to use the Crushing God demo indicator again. Already inhaling a lot of smoke, he repeats this phrase once more. However, nothing seems to work, so he falls to the ground. Desolate and resigned to his death, he wonders if he will die this way. At that moment, his wall ends up breaking. The unique authority of the Blind God's Eye has been activated and is analyzing the target. Stuttering, he wonders who it is. It is a woman 19 years old whose specialty is electrifying. His vision is too blurry and hazy to recognize her. Sometime later at the hospital, the child wonders if he really is her uncle. Then the boy says yes. Still in doubt, she asks about the password, and he responds that it is a mother, the farting fat lady. Then the child realizes it's really him. Seeing this, the child's mother becomes completely irritated, and the two start hugging. As she gets the boy, he wonders if she isn't being too cruel to the patient. Then she says that calling her sister, who worked so hard to clean up her horrible brother's mess. A fat lady is not something one should do. While this entire argument is happening, someone knocks on the door. Curious, the child asks who it is. However, the only thing there is a basket of flowers. Carrying the basket to the boy, she tells her uncle that no one was there. Not understanding anything, he asks who it is. Seeing the ribbon, he wonders if it's the supervisor. But, as it seems, it was the girl who delivered the flowers. At that moment, she recalls how the thorny bull was defeated. While transporting the boy from the fire to the hospital, that guy was near her and managed to use power beyond his limits. She observed him for 4 whole days, but still doesn't understand how that guy possesses something that allows him to surpass his own limits like that. However, she notices something strange and wonders if, in fact, she's being a stalker at this moment. Turning around, she declares that she should go back before being caught spying on him, but she sees that the boy is moving. Nervously, she realizes he's irritated. At the same time, in some exotic forest, a bearded man pleads with someone to reconsider. Speaking to the saint, he says this is the treasure of their tribe. He begins arguing that he saved the tribe, but she says her decision is final. She states that, as she mentioned, it's a treasure passed down in the tribe. However, she warns them not to forget how they were saved from the army. Moreover, she explains that if they repent for the sin of forgetting them by giving up what is most precious to them, they might have a chance to receive his forgiveness. Still on the hospital stretcher, the protagonist is furious, saying these amps are wretched. Seeing this strange scene, the girl is completely confused. She wonders why he's acting like this. Irritated, she declares that he is a patient dying here, forgetting why he has to challenge himself even more. Staying the saint, she notices the subordinates praying for him and calling him a damned ant. At that moment, there's a social question, and they want to offer him a tribute if he accepts. Tribute questions are only offered to important people, so she wonders if he is indeed an important person now. Crossing her legs, she wonders what they're dealing with but accepts. Then she announces that the tribute has been successfully sent. This is one of the 7 fruits left by the world tree. Holding the object, she comments that it doesn't have a strange smell. However, she hadn't read the notification until now. Reading it carefully, she realizes it's an important item. Putting it in his mouth, he says it passed. Upon swallowing, he already feels something strange happening. His entire body ends up being electrocuted. From the rooftop of another building, Sung observes this and doesn't quite understand what's happening. After swallowing the item, the hero starts crying. Irritated, he says it's very salty. He wonders what this taste is, commenting that it's salty, spicy, and even bitter at the same time. But an aura begins to emerge from within his body. In that moment, all of his bandages and plasters fall to the ground. Surprised, he wonders if, in fact, his wounds have healed. Stuttering, he realizes his injuries are no longer there. Even with all of this, Sung comments that it hasn't even been that long since he was covered in burns. She then raises a question about who this man is. At that moment, the additional function of God's blessings in the Good Maker was activated. He can grant blessings using the offerings of his own followers. And, if that's the case, he begins to think the wounds are enjoying it. Not even looking at the phone, the bearded man says they offered treasures to a younger Satria, and not even a response from God. He thinks there's something heavenly about this. Curious, everyone wonders if it's snow. However, they realize it's something edible and say the flavor is divine. The same healing aura ends up coming out of one of the wounds too. One of them says it might return, while another says his wounds are healed. Crying, the bearded man wonders if this is, in fact, a miracle. Also crying, the saint says God blessed them with a miracle, calling him their great, miraculous, and powerful Lord Yu. Congratulating him, the system says he has received 101 loyal believers. The faith of 101 beings has been manifested, and the current amount of faith is 1101. It also notifies him that he received 10,100 white god coins due to the faith, and the fact that they like it so much, even though it's just a taste, leaves the protagonist surprised. At this, the hero starts finding the little creatures cute. Sometime later, in another part of the city, a man starts calling out to someone saying to buy things at the highest prices and that even for hermits, it will be allowed. A bald man ends up bumping into his shoulder. Irritated, the man asks if he's looking for a fight, but one making way is the hero, who comments that this place is dangerous. He says the man should look for a place where normal people like him can sell their items, a place that should also be lively. After searching a lot while the place is still good, he comments that it should be good, while in the background, someone is watching. Entering the establishment, he asks if anyone is there. A woman wearing glasses welcomes him, saying this is the Rita shop. Nervous, the protagonist comments that he's here to sell items and she says he must be a hunter. However, he replies that he isn't and that his abilities have awakened, but he doesn't yet have a hunter's license. At that moment, she hands him a paper, asking him to fill out the form. The girl kindly asks him to sit down and take his time filling it out, and he thanks her. With the little flower in hand, he wonders if she wants him to write where the item came from and questions what he should write. He can't just say he got it after capturing ants in a game. Distressed, he thinks that if it weren't for the house repair fees, it would be different. At that moment, someone else enters the store. She talks about a group that ends up being warmly welcomed by the girl, who says they sponsor the store. Analyzing 2 men, he notices that both have weak muscles, one being 29 years old and the other 35. Distributing the flour, he wonders how they can have weak muscles and questions if they aren't being too strict. Meanwhile, The man says that as far as he knows, the store hasn't been doing well lately, so he brought some decent items. Excited, she thanks him. This is a 31-year-old man whose observation is that he uses humble flames. Mainly, the boy comments that the authority of the blind eye has always made stupid evaluations and doesn't want to know what it's thinking. After that, it's notified that the evaluation is complete. Seeing the item, the girl is amazed and laughing. The man says he went through a lot to get it. The system says the item was used for 29 years, being a piece of iron armored junk, and the observation is that the half-hearted ability of strengthening and confusion was cast on it. The ability was activated for 4 hours. With a magnifying glass, the girl says it has a total of 560 mana and comments that it must be very expensive. Laughing, the man with the pompadour says he guarantees that their items will always be of quality. Smiling, she says she'll only take 3 big notes, and shocked, he questions if she's saying she wants 300 million won in cash. Hearing this proposal, she starts thinking. Then she asks the man to wait a moment and she'll quickly fetch something for her security. Intervening in the negotiation, the protagonist says to wait a moment. Pointing to the men, he warns that this item is fake and that she shouldn't buy it. Despite saying this, unsure, he is shocked, calling himself an idiot and questioning why he got involved. After this statement, everyone watches in silence. One of the men grabs him by the collar, questioning what he's talking about. In the background, the flames in his hand, he asks if the protagonist can prove what he just said. Nervously, the protagonist begins using his ability. Then he uses the crushing god index finger on the armor. Revealing it, he shows that it's a piece of iron armored junk that's been used for 29 years. One of the men becomes completely furious and moves to attack. However, someone yells at him to stop immediately. It's his boss, Edito Petty. Bowing, he apologizes and calls him a high-level hunter, commenting that if it's alright, he'd like to leave right now. The boy allows it and then wonders if, in fact, they mistook him for a high-level hunter. The girl then thanks him for his help and says he must be a hermit. She explains that hermits are those who are reclusive and eccentric, living a normal life without working as hunters. Confused, Yusu wonders how he should explain this to her. Changing the subject, she says he mentioned he was here to sell some items, and he confirms it. Analyzing one of the items, the boy asks what the problem might be. In response, she says it only has 12 mana, and that even if she were to offer more money for it, it's still a Class B item. She then apologizes while the protagonist thinks about how the fake armor earlier had 560 mana. After picking up the ring, the complete evaluation of the item is performed. This is the Druid ring, which number 080 carried for a long time, and the life force of the forest is contained within it. The observation is that it would be good if he gave this ring to Seong Mary, who is nearby. At this moment, the protagonist remembers that this woman is, in fact, the Empress of Thunder. Lurking, Seong talks about the exchange of items. She recalls the boy's rapid healing and wonders if it's the result of a higher level potion since he's barely a Class G hunter. She soon thinks that in reality he's a higher level hunter. To discover his identity and the speed of healing, she considers that he might indeed be able to help her surpass her limits. Hiding, she realizes this is stalking again, just like she did before. Reflective, she wonders what her sister would do if she found out about this. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind her, calling out to Seong and saying he has something to give her. Sometime later, a massive lightning bolt strikes a building. A scientist reports that this is 7,000 MP, the highest even among Ranga hunters. Breathless, the girl realizes that the ring has actually increased her power. In this case, it was the hero who gave her the ring. Seeing the boy, the Empress is extremely confused. Embarrassed, he gently asks her to take it and says it will surely help her. After giving her the ring, he runs off like a lunatic. With the ring in her hands, she can see all the power emanating from it. Smiling, she remembers that he gave her this ring, marveling at how he handed it over as if it were nothing. Seeing this display of power, a man starts clapping. He says it was incredible, while the girl stands pouting with her arms crossed. The same girl states that Seong Mary shouldn't rush as she's still a Class A. Nervous, the redhead comments on the woman's temperament. Waving, he says he can't wait to work with her in the future, and that they'll go on some raids someday. Suddenly, the angry woman calls out to Seong Mary. The older woman with a frightening look warns her that if she messes with revenge or anything of the sort, she will come after her. At that moment, Mary remembers the person who helped her surpass her limits. She declares that revenge will no longer be a dream. The protagonist is nervous and then gets notified that the unique authority Blind Eye has been activated. General Kamikiri is ordered to take Jin with the 5 million troops he commands. He must defeat the monster from the savage black tribe that massacred 100,000 troops of Ribiscos. And Ant then talks about the 4th blade, Kamikiri of the Emperor's 10 blades. She states they will follow his orders. After this bizarre dream, the hero wakes up in a panic. Terrified, he wonders if this was just a dream. Relieved, he thanks the heavens that it was just a dream after all. However, he starts to think about the things that have happened so far and is certain this isn't just a dream as he initially thought. After all, he nearly died because of their symbol, and now he repeats this thought 50 times over. Desperate, he wonders what he should do. Grabbing his phone, he asks who it is and sends a message at this hour. He details that someone, calling themselves the Silent Nightmare, asks if he needs power. Replying, he asks who this person is. The same person calls him an immature and weak god, saying he must sacrifice 100 humans of his kind, especially those with the same blood as him. If he does this, interrupting, the boy curses at him. Not wanting to hear any explanation, he quickly blocks the contact. At this moment, he is notified that the unique authority Blind Eye has been activated. Seeing this screen, the protagonist is shocked. A monster from the savage tribe, General Kamikiri, will tear out his eyes, sever his neck, and then offer his head to the great emperor. Yu realizes this is what he saw in his dream. Looking at the clock, he sees that about 4 days remain. Something else on the phone catches his attention. Entering the game, he notices the saint and the 101 followers are also trembling with fear. He declares to himself that he will have to separate again. In front of the mirror, he wonders why self-analysis isn't working as it works so well on other people. Suddenly, the system notifies him that it worked because you was successfully analyzed. His specialty is being irrational and a failure. After getting this self-analysis, he curses this power. Sitting on his bed, he comments that he bought what he needed from the hunter's shop. Seeing the item War Flames, he bought it without a second thought, thinking it was just a cool name, only to realize it's actually just a lighter. After picking up the ring, the full evaluation of the item is completed. It is said that the effect is incredible if used with the middle finger of a god, but he was deceived once again. Remembering his past, he thinks he should have thrown the phone in the trash. Interrupting himself, he assassinates a message that comes through. It's from the wretched supervisor, tall and powerful, who comments that it has already been a week since he delivered the last manuscript. He acknowledges that this is his personal life, but the professional life also exists. If he delays any longer, it will be complicated since the advance has already been received. This pressure makes the protagonist feel overwhelmed, and he realizes that he has been experiencing several accidents lately. He replies, saying he trusts the supervisor and starts laughing. Shouting to the skies, the hero announces that he needs papikas, the blessing of God he used in some previous cases. He is notified that 20 soldiers are coming in. The assimilation rate of the God Maker increases significantly, from 5% to 10%. The used passive ability is also strengthened. In this, the title, Merciful Redeemer E, is activated. Sometime later, still in his apartment with that hole in the wall. After ingesting many of those blessings from God, Gordo is drooling. In front of the computer, he announces that the manuscript is ready. Then he informs that he should send it to his supervisor. Meanwhile, Seong is out on the street, saying she also managed to eat a cake. Hesitant, she wonders if Gordo will find it strange that she knows his address. She tells herself she needs to make a good impression to ask for a favor. Gathering courage, she tells herself not to be nervous and that she'll just face him. Determined, she begins climbing the stairs of the building. She stands before his door and prepares herself. Completely out of it, the protagonist tells the supervisor he's going to buy him some meat. Nervously, Seong prepares to ring the doorbell. After ringing it, she wonders if he's not home. However, she notices that the door is actually open. The label on the location calls for you. She wonders if, in fact, he isn't home after all. Flashing back to work, someone comments that Gordo is late again. On the verge of teeters, they question if he's going to miss the deadline again. But someone appears with many sheets. They hand them to the protagonist with a friendly smile. Impressed, the man says it's quite a feat to handle everything at once. He becomes so emotional that he starts crying. He then announces that today's meeting will include Korean beef. Returning to the real world, the protagonist is asleep in captivity. One of the men questions how he can sleep in a situation like this. However, the boy starts laughing, saying this is great. With a manic expression, he speaks to the back. Seeing this, everyone steps back. Approaching, the leader uses his firepower, and looking around, the boy realizes it's a kidnapping. He wonders what's going on and if he really has been abducted. This 31-year-old man uses insignificant flames and remarks how impressive it is that he can sleep so soundly in such a situation. Among his companions are a 29-year-old and a 35-year-old with weak muscles. After analyzing them, he wonders if they really have significant flames and weak muscles, just as the analysis suggests. Then he remembers they are the scammers he met at the store. Stammering, he questions what the men want. The leader responds that he wants compensation for the damages caused last time and for interrupting their business. However, he also says he'll accept a bank transfer. Nervous, the hero says his phone isn't here, but one of the companions disproves him. Smiling, he shows that he indeed has his phone. At that moment, the system finishes an evaluation and begins calculating the time remaining until the Imperial army of 5 million soldiers, led by the general, arrives. Suddenly, the countdown reaches 0, and in a frenzy, the boy tells them to untie him immediately and throw the phone away. The leader doesn't understand what he's talking about, but it seems it's already too late. Some disgusting slime starts oozing out on the phone. Instantly, it envelops the man entirely. He disappears completely. Several ants then appear in the room. It seems to be a small army, and one of the men questions what these insects are. Looking back at the flames, he curses the protagonist, saying this is his ability. Smiling, the leader seems to underestimate the insects before him. Then he attacks them with his flames. Almost getting burned, the boy wonders if these weren't supposed to be insignificant flames. Looking around, he notices there are no ants left in the room. It seems they were all burned. With a manic expression, the leader asks if they can calculate how much the boy owes for killing his younger brother. Nervous, the protagonist realizes he's in deep trouble this time. However, the leader's body begins to sway. In an instant, he collapses stiffly to the ground. Blood starts pouring from his head along with a strange object. Looking closely at the floor, it seems to be some kind of catapult created by the ants. Completely desperate upon seeing this massive army, the big guy starts running, screaming for help. Terrified of dying, he begs the protagonist to open the door. He pounds on the door frantically, pleading for help, and the protagonist reflects that this is exactly how he felt when trapped in his apartment. Without haste, an ant calmly commands an attack. Then several stones from the catapult are launched at the man. Quickly, they hit him. Analyzing the situation, the protagonist understands that fewer of those fiery individuals managed to escape from this army. He wonders if he'll make it out alive. Scared, he thinks that if he had known these guys were so strong. In doubt, he realizes that none of this would have happened if it weren't for that cursed game. One of the ants calls in beloved dark god, stating that all his subordinates have died. It continues, saying that it will also kill him and turn him into a snack for his highness. At that moment, Yu notices something strange. A light is emanating from his phone. The system notifies that the effect's small miracle is being activated. Some blue patterns appear on the ceiling. Suddenly, a powerful lightning bolt crashes to the ground like thunder. Seeing this, one of the ants asks how they can better attack His Highness's army. Then it calls for the secret subordinate of the Dark God to reveal themselves. It turns out to be Seong, who asks if Yu is okay. This is Seong Mary, a lively human woman. The high school student calls out to Mr. Yu, who is lying on the ground panicking, talking about Miss Empress of Thunder. The woman uses the ability Blasphemous while the ant questions how she dares attack the army of the Great Emperor. Desperate, the ant notes that she isn't even using her own hands. Laughing, the hero tells them to check their own backsides. Analyzing the situation, the ant realizes the boy has the power to summon a very strong follower. It concludes that this dark god is the most malevolent of all, capable of destroying the empire and competing for the royal throne. Soon it declares that he, Kamakiri, will die here today. However, it resolves to defeat at least one of his followers. Meanwhile, Seong continues firing her lightning strikes, annoyed by the sheer number of insects. In the background, one of the ants calls out to the general, urging him to seek shelter. It reflects on how its servants are pleading and how it must exude an incredible aura of authority, one that would stain its precious blade with blood. Then it wonders if the general has prepared a sacrifice, stating that it will offer the heads of its soldiers as tribute. The entity accepts. One of its soldiers continues telling the general he needs to retreat. Everyone keeps calling for the general, but he simply ignores them. With a single motion, he attacks everyone at once. Seeing this, both the protagonist and the girl are stunned. Furious, the general seems to radiate the aura of a murderer. Moreover, his imposing presence has increased significantly. Witnessing this immense power, Yusu questions whether he just killed his own subordinates. This is Kamakiri, a 98-year-old man, whose specialty as the Empire's general still aims to take Seong Miri's head with the Millennial Blade. Seeing all this, the hero understands that the monster is targeting the girl. As he charges to attack her, the general declares that this is an insult to the Great Emperor. With a demonic appearance, he states he will take her life as payment. Nervous, Seong tries to activate her ability quickly. Then, before the general reaches her, she unleashes the lightning storm attack. However, the general manages to defend against it. Using his own blade, it's as if he sliced the lightning into several pieces. Afterward, he continues rushing toward the girl. With his demonic blade, he prepares to finish her off once and for all. Stammering, his body trembling, Yu screams for her, but she ends up taking a slash to the chest. The impact of the attack is so strong that it reaches the protagonist. Afterward, he begins to open his eyes. He then sees the girl on the ground. Her hair is scattered across various areas, stained with blood. The ant declares that her life can pay the price for disrespecting the emperor. Facing the protagonist, it calls him the dark god of the Shadow Tribe. It declares that he too must pay with his mediocre life. With his body trembling, the protagonist cannot contain his rage and remains silent. Suddenly, the monster begins to open its single eye. Behind the boy, a creature emerges as if it were some sort of box. This monster in question possesses an unknown authority, and with a silent nightmare present, a mortal fate looms ahead. This nightmare has not yet come to pass. Seeing all of this, the protagonist calls them cursed insects. Furthermore, the system informs him that this is a fate that will happen simultaneously soon. Yu Ilshin is a being capable of changing mortal fate. Angry, the boy says that those people saved him 3 times. Faced with it all, the system asks if he wants to change the mortal fate with the authority of God. However, upon selecting yes, 100,000 God coins will be consumed. Without hesitation, the protagonist agrees. At that moment, a great light fills the room. Yu's eyes are completely different from before. Time is being rewound with God's authority, and fate is being altered. Rewinding slightly, the girl's lightning is sliced into several pieces. As the ant approaches, she thinks it looks different, more dangerous. Then the system informs him that it is consuming 100,000 God coins. Afraid, Seong thinks she's about to die. However, several chains break apart, altering Seong Mary's fate. Nervously, the girl braces herself for death. Acting quickly, the boy pulls her out of harm's way. Grabbing her by her clothes, he manages to save her from the insect's fatal strike. Both she and the ant are stunned by this. Yu's eyes burn with rage, exuding an indescribable hatred. Even Seong is nervous, muttering that she knew it. Without making eye contact, he asks if she's okay, calling her Empress of Thunder. She replies that she is. Still determined to kill all servants of the Dark God, the ant declares that he must die, labeling him a damned Dark God. Utterly irritated, Yu simply calls it an annoying insect. Using his index finger, he activates the Condemnation of God ability, this time using his middle finger as an extra edge. Instantly, the entire warehouse explodes. A massive plume of smoke rises to the sky. As it disintegrates, the ant shouts for them to hail the Great Emperor. However, before finishing its sentence, it disappears completely. Both the protagonist and Seong are enveloped in flames, and the flustered girl silently thinks this guy is the one to be her master. Sometime later, the protagonist is at home. Seong is holding a trowel, gently asking her teacher to let her handle it. She is also carrying bags of cement on her back. Nervous at the sight, the boy remains silent. Rewinding a bit, he was holding that object and wondering where to use it. Looking at him with admiration, she remarks that he's a hermit and says she had been wondering about that. The protagonist feels something is off, thinking something isn't right. Falling to her knees, Seong pleads and calls him teacher. She says she wants to be the strongest, to do everything she can, acknowledging it won't be easy, but gently asks him to accept her. Hesitant, the hero realizes he needs to train soon. He works on his web novel while she simply observes. He calls her Empress of Thunder, but she corrects him, saying he can call her Mer. Curious, he asks what that means here, and she replies that it's until her teacher teaches her. Arguing, the hero insists he's just a regular person and also rank G. Explaining, the girl says he gave her a ring that made her much stronger, questioning how someone who gave such a ring could be rank G. Countering, he says he's glad it helped her, but that he just found it somewhere, trying to explain. Interrupting, Seong pleads, asking him to at least give her a chance to make up for her mistake. Sometime later, while holding a paint roller, she remarks that now it finally looks like someone lives here. She brilliantly painted the entire room wall, making it look brand new. At that moment, she hears a sound like thunder. She wonders if it's going to rain, but the girl explains that it might just be her stomach growling. Yu acknowledges her hard work and suggests they order something. She agrees, saying she wants black bean noodles. Worried, he receives an emergency call and tells her they'll have to postpone the black bean noodles for now. Still holding the serum in hand, he sighs. Then he calls for her attention, asking her to wait. After buying the god's growth blessing, he hands it to her, telling her to take it with her. Excited, she asks how he managed to do that, saying it seemed like something Hunter Kangyu would do. The protagonist, however, insists he doesn't know who that is. Seong thanks him as she leans against the window, saying she'll need it while sipping the drink, but he replies that she can down it in one gulp. As she jumps out the window, she says she'll see him later. Watching her fly off, he resigns himself to eating alone. Sometime later, someone serves him food while the TV broadcasts the latest news. A journalist reports that an S-rank monster drake has appeared due to a rift at the parliamentary gate. One of the men comments that he hopes it destroys everything while it's here. However, the journalist states that fortunately, a hunter arrived quickly on the scene. He continues, saying that buying time for citizens to flee seems to be the best course of action, and that the hunter is currently facing the drake alone. It's the B-rank hunter, the Empress of Thunder. Hearing this, the boy spits out his food. The man adds that while people believe she can't handle an S-rank monster, the Mambi Hunters Association has been asked to send reinforcements quickly. They then show live footage of the scene, and upon seeing it, the protagonist stammers, questioning if this isn't too dangerous since it's an S-rank. This S-rank monster resembles a giant serpent. The beast is massive and prepares to attack. With just one swipe, it destroys the ground entirely. Seong dodges while holding someone. After setting the girl down, she tells her to run as far as she can and promises to stop the monster. The girl, teary-eyed, thanks her. Facing the S-rank monster, Seong wonders if she can handle it alone. Nervous, she recalls her sister's warnings not to act alone. Interrupting her thoughts, the monster strikes the ground again, but Seong manages to dodge. She tells herself to focus and not overthink. While airborne, she prepares her thunder strike. In mere seconds, she launches it directly at the monster. The impact is so strong that the beast crashes to the ground. Excitedly, the reporter announces that the Empress of Thunder has taken down the drake, saying our heroine has returned once again to save citizens after the Thorn Terror. The civilians comment that this is expected of the Empress of Thunder, and another calls her amazing. Overjoyed, the student celebrates her success. However, a part of the monster draws close to her. It's Trapper, capable of long-range attacks with its right arm. After being hit, the Empress wonders if she truly isn't strong enough. Seeing this, everyone, including the reporter, cameraman, and civilians, becomes anxious. Seong falls to the ground, her body trembling. She remembers her sister's words telling her not to show off and calling her a B rank. Looking back, she notices the potion her teacher gave her. Meanwhile, the reporter states that although the drake is still alive, the whereabouts of the Empress of Thunder remain unknown. As the monster approaches, the reporter says it's coming toward them and hopes the Empress is safe. Suddenly, a bright yellow light appears in the distance. It's the Empress of Thunder, now wielding both her signature blue lightning and a new yellow lightning. As the massive monster looms over the city, everyone is in shock. But Miria surprises everyone by appearing with multiple bolts of lightning in her hands. Angry, she unleashes her ability toward the monster. Shin is at a restaurant watching everything on TV. Everyone is amazed, exclaiming how incredible the Empress of Thunder is. The news reports that the A-rank hunter, the Empress of Thunder, is currently defeating the S-rank drake. Shortly after, they broadcast a live interview with the Empress of Thunder on site. The reporters ask, "You defeated the giant S-rank monster so quickly after being promoted. How do you feel?" Miria, clearly embarrassed, asks if this is live. For a moment, she wonders if her master is watching and proudly says she did it. Miria thanks him, saying it was all thanks to the potion he gave her. The scene shifts to Shin and Miria in his room. Shin wonders why his views are over 2 million and why he has influenced someone like her. As he tells Miria, she is overjoyed and grateful that he bought her dinner. But the protagonist tells her she should head home soon or her family will get worried. Awkwardly, she replies that no one would worry about her that much. However, the protagonist responds that it's impossible for no one to care about such a beautiful daughter. She, in a sad tone, responds that both of her parents died in the Lesser Dragon incident. The protagonist is shocked by the revelation. The one explains the incident, saying the entire world united and barely managed to defeat it, costing millions of lives. Shin, feeling embarrassed for asking such a question, offers Miria some food, which she kindly accepts. Distracted, the protagonist glances at his phone and notices 2 new messages. The first states that he has satisfied the favorability and trust of the target. If the target says the next key phrase, faith can be activated. The activation phrase for faith is, "I trust you, Ilshin Nim." He wonders if this is some kind of visual novel game. Then he recalls that activating faith is like when he gained a lot of god coins with the saint. but he doesn't know when the next ambush from the N army will happen, and the more god coins, the better. Returning to reality, he speaks to Miria. The girl responds, saying she has a favor to ask. Elated, the heroine says she can ask for anything. He asks if she can repeat what she just said. Without hesitation, she agrees and says the phrase, trusting him. Immediately, a notification appears that he has successfully formed faith. The boy is stunned. Another message follows. Congratulations, Seen Miria is your first follower on Earth. Current followers, 1,102. However, instead of receiving god coins, he gains a skill or ability sharing system. Angry at this discovery, he desperately wants the coins. Concerned, Miria asks why he's upset and if something is bothering him. Surprisingly, a portal opens behind Miria, which she doesn't notice. Elders appear, observing the protagonist, questioning if he is the dark god of the Shadow Tribe. They promise a proud position to such an arrogant man, no matter how low it may be, claiming His Majesty made an excellent decision. The insect declares to its companions that this dark god will be of great importance in the upcoming Great War. They plan to show the dark god the generosity of His Majesty. Back to Shin, he wonders if he can use the lightning storm ability whenever he wants. Testing it out, he instantly incinerates all of His Majesty's servants. Miria is amazed by this, but he ends up destroying his own apartment. Worried about the immense repair costs, Shin sighs, while Miria asks what's wrong and why he seems so down. Meanwhile, inside the game, His Majesty questions why the delegation was annihilated. The servants explain, saying the gods suddenly unleashed lightning as if uninterested in negotiation. His Majesty retorts, saying it was his idea to send a delegation to such a savage dark god. Surprisingly, the enraged sovereign impales the servants, killing them instantly. Rising from the throne, His Majesty seethes with fury. He demands that the head of that ignorant and arrogant dark god be brought to him, declaring it a matter of honor for the divine throne of the empire. All servants obey His Majesty, the great demigod and ruler of the empire. Miria is engaged in intense training, running countless laps around the track. Meanwhile, Shin watches in awe as she runs at incredible speed without using any of her abilities. He realizes she truly is a high-class hunter and finds it remarkable, asking if she plans to do more laps. He asks if she really completed her 100 laps, and Sion confirms it. He advises her to take a break before continuing, and she thanks him. Afterward, he hands Miria an energy drink, but it seems to work differently on her. It may seem trivial, but he accepted her as a disciple and feels the need to support her somehow. All he can offer is this potion. Returning to training, she asks what she should do next. He suggests squats, but Shin, deep in thought, struggles to figure out how to train her effectively. Observing her through the blind god's eye, he is shocked when a celestial figure resembling the white tiger descends from the sky. The white tiger reveals itself as Miria's true nature, sealed away for the past 10 years. The girl, originally an SS-class hunter, momentarily unlocked her power using the cursed god's index finger. This means her power was blocked all this time but is now unlocked because the chains were broken. On a sunny afternoon amidst a bustling crowd, the athlete thanks her teacher. Her teacher advises her to drink the potion before going to sleep. Unexpectedly, she runs at full speed straight home. The protagonist is astonished at her current level of strength. He starts to wonder how powerful she'll become once all of her chains are broken. Curious, he questions who could have chained her in the first place. However, he puts this thought aside, believing he'll eventually uncover the truth. On his way home, someone in the crowd watches him closely. Back at his residence, he notices a massive hole in his house. A notification pops up on his phone, one from the Silent Nightmare gazing at him sorrowfully, and another from Thousand Blades that cut everything, glaring at him with resentment. He's angry, remembering he had blocked both of their numbers earlier. He doesn't worry about it much now, but considers that these two might be potential stalkers. They persist, sending him countless messages. Even when he tells them to stop, Thousand Blades offers 2.2 million god coins, collected from his army as tribute, in exchange for the divine blade. The protagonist is skeptical, asking when he stole that, and warns him not to make offers with stolen money. Meanwhile, Silent Nightmare mocks him, offering 10 million coins for the blade as a sign of revenge. The protagonist becomes intrigued, thinking that with that money he could buy a good basic class authority or item. Not to mention, he could purchase many potions for Miria. Thousand Blades becomes agitated at Silent Nightmare's offer. Silent Nightmare laughs, calling him bankrupt. Thousand Blades sheds a tear and says he'll offer his authority instead. The protagonist wonders what kind of authority that might be. Thousand Blades reveals his unique authority, Ultra Blade. Shin is impressed, thinking the Ultra Blade sounds awesome. He believes that with such a blade, no one would dare challenge him. The boy feels confident, fantasizing that every man dreams of wielding a blade like this. But Silent Nightmare interrupts, suggesting he take his authority instead. The rose that blooms at night. It activates only when the user is asleep. Shin, confused, asks what this rose that blooms at night is. Silent Nightmare explains that with its power, you won't even need to break a sweat to suppress your enemies. The protagonist is amazed by this answer. Eventually, he receives both abilities. However, he can only use Thousand Blades treasure 3 times, so he decides to save it. The Ultra Blade and the rose that blooms at night. What are these and how should he use them? Out of curiosity, he tries using the rose that blooms at night. It appears not to work. Moments later, he learns that the rose that blooms at night only activates when the user is asleep. Upon realizing this, he feels foolish for trusting a stalker. He then attempts to use the Ultra Blade authority. At first, nothing seems to happen. Suddenly, he is overwhelmed by an intense rage. He feels tired and sluggish, but is overtaken by an insatiable urge to cut. Grabbing a knife, he runs out into the streets like a madman. The scene shifts to a store where employees are bidding each other farewell. One remarks that there are still vegetables left to cut, but one points to a mysterious figure. It's revealed to be Shin, frantically slicing all the produce in the market. Afterward, he returns home utterly exhausted and puts the blade away. He mutters that the blade has a will of its own and can control people. Certain that something bad would happen, he vows never to touch it again. Exhausted, the boy quickly falls asleep, unaware of the ant army preparing to confront him. However, something surprising happens. At this moment, the rose activates, defending him while he's asleep. The army is bewildered, unable to understand what is happening. The rose unfurls and begins attacking the soldiers, consuming them one by one. The commander identifies it as the Flower of Nightmares. She recalls reading about it in ancient texts. One of her soldiers asks, "What should we do?" Without hesitation, she charges straight at it. Encouraged by her bravery, the soldiers follow her lead. Yet their attacks prove useless against the flower's immense power. The commander launches herself forward and drives her spear directly into the flower, but it's all in vain. The flower remains unscathed. The next morning, Shin wakes up as if nothing happened. He complains of a terrible stomachache. Checking his phone, he sees a message. It states that the Saint Maiden and her 101 followers desperately wish to be rescued by their god. Shin, concerned, asks if he isn't feeling well. Using the blind god's eye ability, he discovers that the Saint Maiden and her followers have become addicted to the venom of the killer bee tribe. The protagonist searches for solutions for ants addicted to venom. Worried, he activates a miracle. He wonders what this could mean. One of the most important things for a god is performing miracles for their followers. Depending on the miracles provided, followers may worship or fear the god even more as their faith grows. To perform the miracle of healing, divine power and 100,000 god coins are required. Without hesitation, Shin accepts. A portion of the world tree fruit previously absorbed by Shin is used as an ingredient for the miracle. The miracle is performed according to his desire. He wonders if the followers will recover now, then promptly falls asleep. The title Benevolent Merciful Redeemer God is upgraded from Class E to Class D. Shin's alignment shifts from malicious to neutral. Some benevolent gods, including Abundant Harvest, begin to notice him. The ants, still poisoned, suddenly receive healing from the heavens. Overjoyed, one ant thanks God Shin and offers a tribute as a token of faith. The protagonist wakes up feeling utterly exhausted. He is startled to find Miri in his room. The girl scolds him for skipping training and says she was very worried. Shin apologizes. Miri notices a peculiar statue in the room. Shin doesn't understand what it is or how it ended up in his room. The statue of Yahello Black Tribe was made as a symbol of gratitude and fanaticism. However, Shin finds the statue ridiculously ugly. Admiring it, Miri asks if she can have one. Shin responds, "Of course, if you want." The protagonist thinks he should get Miri's vision checked. He expresses regret, explaining he won't be able to train today. Miri assures him it can wait for another day. Shin resumes working on his script. However, another notification arrives from his ants. Checking the message, he learns that a sprout from the world tree has grown, thanks to the miracle he performed using the world tree fruit. However, the sprout is diseased. He considers using the blessing of the growing world, but it turns out to have no effect. If he manages to nurture the sprout and make it grow, he could sell its fruits. Shin opens his app to check if anything useful is available in the shop. He finds the Tears of Abundant Harvest. A mission suddenly appears. The protagonist is tasked with cleaning the streets. After completing his task, he contributes to cleaning up the world. His score increases by 1. The progress is slow, and he wonders how long it will take to finish. Unexpectedly, a mysterious man taps him on the shoulder. The elderly man warns Shin that a rookie like him shouldn't be in this area. Shin assumes the man is a beggar. However, the man seems familiar. Shin tries to explain, saying there's a misunderstanding. Still, Shin keeps confusing the elder for a beggar. To resolve the situation, he offers money for a warm meal. Enraged, the old man complains about being given charity. He reveals himself as S-rank hunter Choi Kangsan, who used to be a trash hunter. However, Choi doesn't refuse Shin's goodwill and accepts the money. Shin checks his phone only to find his score hasn't increased at all despite giving alms to the man. The protagonist realizes he donated to a drunkard. Irritated, he confronts the old man, calling him old geezer. The elder doesn't appreciate Shin's attitude. Shin insists that he just wants the man to dispose of the trash in the bag he's carrying. At this, the muscular elder bursts into laughter. Shin, utterly confused, doesn't understand what's so funny. Still laughing, the elder remarks that Shin is perceptive and asks who he's working for. Shin replies that he's self-employed and works for no one. Choi nods, saying, "Ah, of course. Being yourself is more comfortable." Suddenly, a sound draws their attention. A monster appears. People on the street panic at the sight. Choi remarks that they finally arrived and that he knew the forecast was correct. The protagonist tries to leave as quickly as possible. However, Choi pulls him along into the battle. Choi muses aloud that the prophecy predicted an 80% chance of a rift appearing, and it seems he hasn't lost his touch. Shin finds himself sprawled on the ground. The elder checks on him, commenting that he thought Shin was at least B rank. Shin, still weak, is startled when an animalistic figure emerges in the skies. Shui wonders aloud if it's Beelzebub. noting that if it is, he'll have to put in considerable effort. Challenging the monster, the old man loudly declares that it looks like they'll be having frog legs for dinner. The creature speaks, declaring it's perfect that Shin is the rumored young god, adding that it seems it arrived before the others. If the frog-like beast manages to offer the boy to its master, it will be satisfied and commands the old human to step aside. Shui, completely unbothered, tells it that it's making an awful racket and charges at the monster to attack. However, the monster insists the old man step aside because the boy belongs to it. Shui refuses, standing firm. Unconscious, Shin unintentionally activates the rose that blooms at night, which begins to engulf the monster. The creature is teleported to the realm of the ants. Shin, regaining some consciousness, wonders where he is. He encounters an ant but briefly returns to reality, seeing the old man terrified and being consumed by a giant flower. The old man reeks terribly, but despite being unconscious, Shin manages to defeat the dark god, exceeding the mission's requirements. He is rewarded with abundant harvest. The abundant harvest ability activates, healing the sixth sprout of the world tree. Finally able to relax, Shin wonders what he should do with the old man. The elder is in complete despair, crying out for his mother. An ambulance arrives and takes the old man away, leaving Shin questioning if he'll be okay. In a different setting, two businessmen discuss Choi Kangson. One notes that even after a long hiatus, Kangson handled the monster with ease and asks his colleague how the old man is doing in the hospital. The other responds that Kangson wasn't injured during the battle. Relieved, the businessman remarks that he knew Kangson still had it in him. However, the second businessman adds there's one more thing. He explains that he tried to buy flowers for Kangson, but had an unexpected reaction, wondering if he might be allergic to flowers. Changing the subject, he inquires about the Academy Hunter's progress. The colleague replies that everything is ready, and as soon as Choi Kangson is discharged from the hospital, the project will begin immediately. They are confident Kangson will be an excellent teacher for the Empress of Thunder and eagerly anticipate the partnership between the best teacher and the most talented student. Back in Shin's apartment, he complains about how annoying it is that two new statues have appeared. The ant from before continues messaging him. Shin discovers he can communicate with the ants via text messages. The ants reveal they were attacked by demonic beasts. Infuriated, Shin demands to know who dared to mess with his followers and asks to be taken to the beasts so he can deal with them personally. The ants thank him profusely and agree to lead him. After a long trek through the forest, Shin encounters numerous demon-invoked cockroach beasts. These creatures multiply every hour and originated from the demon realm. Horrified, Shin questions why there are so many of them. The ants, desperate and scared of dying, urge everyone to flee. However, their leader encourages them not to panic, reminding them they are under Yushin's protection. But Shin, terrified of cockroaches, bolts, abandoning them. The ants, devastated, feel betrayed. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, a mysterious voice questions someone's certainty. The response is confident, asserting that in 4 days, they'll deliver the body of the false god. The leader warns that failure will result in death. An urgent message bearer interrupts, angering the leader, who threatens to decapitate them if the message isn't important. The message reveals that the beast tamer has multiplied the cockroaches into millions, framing Shin as the malicious and ruthless false god. Back in Shin's apartment, he manages to find insect repellent. The ants, still saddened and almost disappointed in Shin, find solace when he unconsciously saves them. Eventually, Shin meets the requirements for a new passive skill, God's multiplying thumb. While it seems like a good deal for just 100 coins, the reviews make him skeptical. Unexpectedly, his manager urgently requests a meeting. Shin heads to a bar where his colleague offers him an alcoholic drink, which he accepts, asking why the older man is staring at him like that. The manager asks what's happening with Shin's current work pace. Shin finds himself quite confused about the current pace of work and doesn't know how to respond. The manager is very drunk and asks him not to shout anymore, blaming the boy and saying that he had to go through everything. The protagonist becomes confused and asks what he had to go through. Then he picks up his phone and sees a new message. It says that demonic beasts are attacking again, asking him to help the Black Tribe ant defend against the demonic beasts. The manager, however, becomes furious and slaps him. The two then start a heated argument. Afterward, the man apologizes. The ants are enjoying the blessings given by the Lord. They are confident they will cleanse the entire world of the demonic beasts. Sometime later at night, the tiers of abundant prosperity that support Yushin requested help, and then he obtains a free skill. The creation of heaven and earth, transcendent class, restricted skill category for transcendental beings only of inconceivable value. However, the user Yushin is not suitable to use the passive skill. Nonetheless, the creation of heaven and earth will be converted into a use of false creation of heaven and earth to suit Yushin's statue. The world will partially change with a great notification on the screen. Switching to Sia and Mary, her friend asks what she has been doing so far, and she is staring at the sky, wondering what that is and what is happening. Everyone is scared, unable to understand anything, when a second moon appears in the sky, and someone says it is the Empress of Thunder, the name of the hunter who has been disrupting the guild leader's business. The mysterious figure watches the sky with her henchman right behind her, saying that the time has finally come. Then the man says, the more the better, and that they will start with 2,000 for now, and he calls for the Lord to wait just a little longer. His loyal follower will ensure that his will is done. and they will bless this world with the will of God. This is Houston, MTS-2 exploration rocket. Please report the situation on the second moon. Houston, this is the MTS-2 exploration rocket. It's impossible to approach the second moon. In despair, they realize they have lost control of the spacecraft. The second moon that appeared in the morning must have surprised everyone, although nothing is known except that its light is golden at night and green during the day. Experts say that portals and dungeons may increase explosively. In response, the Korean Hunters Association announced at a press conference that it would work on this problem together with governments and associations from other countries. The girl completed 500 laps in 4 minutes, impressing the teacher, who had a headache. The teacher suggests she do planks. She then realizes that the teacher thinks the abdominal region of the body is important, but in fact he needs to take another look at Mary's mental image. The athlete starts her exercises and her teacher uses the unique authority of the blind god's eye. The protagonist sees that his inner tiger has become cuter. He loses part of the chains holding the little tiger, but there is still a lot left, although he has already made quite some progress. The tiger thinks the guy is no longer being affectionate with him. While licking the teacher needs to see if Mary's power was amplified. Thus, she releases a wave of energy and says the teacher's training methods are very effective. He thinks it's not true and says there are already plenty of people watching, so it's better to be careful. Mary thanks her instructor. He responds to her nervously and thinks it's a relief that the effects are showing. Excited, the girl says she will end the day with 200 more laps. On her phone, she receives a notification. It's the little creature asking for a name. Well, the boy can't keep calling her Sink, so it would be good if she had a name. And he starts thinking of names like Belinha and Baksoon. Just as he is thinking about it, he is interrupted in his head because he is not good with names. Ilshin thinks he is a genius for calling her auntie since she is an ant. She is very happy with her name. Then all the ants appear, asking for the blessing of receiving a name. Ilshin wonders how he will name so many ants. He thinks it doesn't matter, so one is Fu, the other is Oda. And after naming so many, he goes home. The boy says the repairs are finished, so it's time to rest. At that moment, his phone beeps and he gets angry, asking what's wrong now. The saint and 100 followers of the Dark Tribe have evolved. Thanks to the experience of hunting catastrophic demonic beasts and the blessing of the name given by Ilshin, they evolved. Tipo Yagami observes cuteness. The protagonist is surprised that there was an evolution on his screen. Due to the evolution of the Yagami, the XP of the summoned demonic beast potato will be exchanged. Ilshin leveled up to level 2. Not understanding anything, the boy asks if the game had levels. The rebirth of civilization was activated due to the level increase. The ant scream of the forest is changing. The saint is surprised and wonders what kind of miracle he will perform this time. He himself is shocked as the game is now decorated. Houses and monuments emerge along with plantations, since he built training fields and walls, and now they can train and defend themselves properly. Auntie asks the population if they have seen all these miracles of Ilshin and calls for them to worship him. The people begin to praise their god behind the cell phone. The dark-haired boy gets nervous about it but realizes they are getting cuter by the day, along with the name Yagami Tribe. He notices that Yagami means ant in an ancient language. Then they will evolve too. Upon saying this, he notices a question mark button on his screen and clicks it to try. The Warrior's Tower, created in imitation of the Seeker of Eternity Tower, is a tower where only those with strong faith and bravery can enter who desire the blood and soul of their opponent. Notes: survival chances are 0.0000001%. A cursed tower appears. They immediately start wondering what it is. The Yagami tribe is scared of the Warrior's Tower. He realizes that if the ants enter, even out of curiosity, a notification appears in the game asking if they should tear down walls, with 2 options as answers, yes or no. Yu says they need to tear down the walls and block the entrance. Everything around them is destroyed. The god warns them not to think of entering the tower out of curiosity. The ants misunderstand and think it is a tower where only the brave can enter. The brave one among the ants wants to be stronger than everyone, and he decides he can protect his friends. Cutting to the temple. Someone tells the emperor that it's impossible. The great shaman, who even made a contract with the demon king, asks for one more chance for all of this. His Majesty demands silence and says that the only excuse is death. The henchman begs for mercy. She stands, revealing her enormous size. The queen points her finger at him, and he runs away. Her power begins to emanate from the tip of her finger. She yells, calling them useless insects. Jim must definitely go personally. He pleads for calm, asking how the lineage of a great god could go to meet a worthless little brat. Extremely angry, she asks rhetorically how she could trust and rely on scum like them who can't even handle some worthless ants. Everyone feels useless. The mystic asks Her Majesty to control herself. Happily, Her Majesty welcomes her beloved. Everyone receives the goddess right after. She brings news that she has completed the mission she was sent on and has returned to Her Majesty. Her Majesty will soon ascend from a demigod to a true god. She asks to leave the work to her and prepare to become a god. The girl says that the Dark Tribe and its evil god will be eradicated in the name of the Arachnids. There is an insect dying to a blood-sucking fly. The goddess then says he will pay for angering Her Majesty. She will defeat him with a plague he bestowed upon her. The fly says that's wonderful, but he will be the one to kill. Desperate, the protagonist is on his computer. The man remembers that if he doesn't finish his work within a week, they'll have to terminate the contract with them. Desperate, typing very quickly, he says he can't lose this contract. The dark-haired boy needs to be strong and finish quickly. Curious about the ants, he wonders what must be happening now while picking up his phone. The ants are sleeping, but there's a guy rolling a rock bigger than his body. Number 1, a warrior of the Yagami tribe. Status: he is in grueling training to protect his family. The god finds it incredible, as it seems the civilization evolved and created its own goal. He wonders if he can help them a little more and what he could do. A potion appears in the sky. The Ant-Man grabs it and wonders what it must be. It is a gift from his god, and he thinks the god was watching him the whole time while crying and thanking him, shouting, and so he will work even harder, even though he's dying of sleep. The mosquito sees him and says he will pay for killing his precious partners. The flashback shows the mosquito offering to suck Yu's blood because he wonders every day what it would taste like. The goddess allows it and tells him to go ahead. The blood and honor for killing him will all belong to Mosto, the flying vampire. He declares that he wants to gain power by sucking his blood because he needs to grow stronger and steal from the emperor. That way, everything will be his. Mosto thinks the man is too slow and asks if he underestimated him. Meanwhile, the man is just tired and thinking about finishing quickly so he can lie down. He hasn't even noticed the mosquito's presence. The mosquito bites the god, and cautiously he feels the power flowing, experiencing immense pleasure. With this power, his desire will become reality. However, the dark-haired man hits his own head trying to wake up and ends up killing Mosto. He wonders why there are so many mosquitoes in the summer. Suddenly, God feels a chill and sneezes, leaving himself all messy. He decides to take a shower. Looking in the mirror, he notices a mark on his forehead and wonders what it could be. Checking his phone, the notification says he has been cursed with a plague. Symptoms of chills have been activated. It's a flu curse. Undeterred, he decides to go to work. Instantly, the symptoms of fever, muscle aches, and anemia are activated. The man searches for some healing item in the hunter's store. God grabs Wada's pill to see if it resolves things for now. The purchase is successful and a mission is created. He considers going to a hospital. The young man starts by saying his name is Kim Ta-byum. He was supposed to be the chosen hero, even if he's losing his mind. He managed to see a god and witness the man creating a miracle with his own eyes. And because of him, he went from rank E to C. Many sacrifices are necessary to maintain the existence of a god like the purple-haired one in this world. Servant of God Kim Ta-byum would fulfill his god's requests without fearing death. That was enough. He's a god and will purify this world. The mysterious man will definitely do as he was told. Today, he will do his best to purify this world. The man reveals that he is covered in bombs and also bears the curse mark on his forehead. Thus, he declares that this is his life mission and will complete it at any cost. Our protagonist arrives at the hospital by taxi. The message says that for the mission, if he wants to save himself, he must first save others. If he wants to live, he will only be healed after saving 100 people. The bar of saved humans is at 0/100th. At the hospital, he drags himself around trying to save 100 people, wondering why they don't just kill him already. The cursed bomber grabs a woman and orders everyone to stay quiet and lie down on the floor. If anyone moves, the girl dies along with everyone else. The apprentice arrives with a ball of energy in her hand and orders him to release the nurse. The lunatic sees that the protagonist has the same mark and calls him to join in, thinking they are on the same mission. Murray recognizes him and asks what he's doing there, while the terrorist invites him to help. Kim Ta-byum insists on making the sacrifice for the god of destruction together. Surprised, the student asks what he's talking about and claims that he is her teacher. The bald man says she's the one who should explain what she's talking about and asks if she doesn't see the mark on his forehead. Outraged, the girl questions how her teacher could be evil and asks if he wants to die. Nearly dying, he asks for treatment. The bomber says he is a servant of the cult of the god of destruction. The girl, however, responds that he is her teacher. As soon as she says that, the bald man gets agitated and says he will blow everything up if she doesn't stop talking. And so she insults him regardless of what he just said. Very angry, he insults her back and says sacrifices must be offered, and he will be the one to bring the purification of the world. She will never understand its meaning. Attempting to read the target's mind, he succeeds, and in his memories, the protagonist sees what drove the terrorist to do something like this. He should look for someone his size to fight not fragile people in a hospital. But the terrorist is about to press the button. Immediately, he tries to stop the guy using his god's index finger power. Thus, the teacher and his student charge in to stop him. She launches her lightning bolt and takes him down. The girl is about to celebrate with him but sees him collapse on the floor. The demon calls him to death in his mind. At that moment, the necrosis effect is activated. In desperation, she tries to save him. Nava offers to kill. The lady says no. But what if that demon's curse doesn't work, she questions. If it fails, they will wait for the king's orders. She points out that the curse of that plague is extremely cunning, and not even with that power can one deal with it. Even if it doesn't work, he would never give up on prey like that. The boy shifts to a different plan. It must be the bomb from the bald man who spoke to him. A mysterious voice welcomes the little god and asks how he dares to awaken, saying it will ensure his death is slow and painful. You will be tortured, cry endlessly, and in the end, I beg the thing to kill you already, and I'll use a toothpick to clean my teeth. The ugly thing asks if he's scared and wonders if he'll survive. His mission to save people is now at 1238/100 and his mission is complete. Thus, he awakens from where he is. As a reward, he receives Wada's pill. His student is happy to see him. Automatically, he swallows the pill and feels healed. As an additional reward, he gains more divine power. Everyone saved is grateful to Hirome. The teacher rushes out, saying he'll call her later. The demon, observing, states that he personally confirmed the bomb would work. A man says it seems that servant failed to execute the plan. The servant apologizes and promises the plan won't fail next time. The demon gives him 3 days. Within 3 days, he must capture that man and bring him. The man speaking with the demon asks why he wants the protagonist. The demon explains that his power shines so brightly it caught his attention and he must have been blessed by the gods. Lying relaxed on his bed, the dark-haired man is happy with the pill's effects. A notification appears on his phone. It's about the ants. They need his help. One of them asks if he could give more of that yellow elixir while pleading on the ground. The god doesn't understand a thing. He asks if the ant is okay, but the man is nearly dying. In flashbacks, the ant struggles through the Tower of Challenges, suffering greatly before even nearing the end. This deeply worries the protagonist, so he grants divine growth, but it doesn't work. The game shows that Ilho will die in 7 seconds. The god thinks carefully and remembers he received the reward Master of the Blue Sky. At the last second, he manages to heal Ilho and takes the opportunity to scold him, saying he shouldn't have entered such a dangerous tower. The ant apologizes, explaining he wanted to protect his people. The protagonist suggests he leave immediately. However, the door won't open, and there's an explanation for this. They need to reach level 50. Ilho asks what they'll do. A notification appears recommending the Eternal Tower. Angry, the god asks what this notification is now and is certain it will be absurd, but he has no choice. The boy notices potions in his room and hears a knock at the door. He grabs the potions and hands them to his friend. Then he quickly heads to the door. When he answers, he's met by a man who asks if he's the hunter Yu Ilshin. The man introduces himself as Kim Taman, the recruitment manager of the Brilliant Guild. The boy replies that he's not a hunter. The man responds that he soon will be and asks to talk for a minute. Yu agrees. Meanwhile, Ilho is challenging the Eternal Tower like a great warrior. He overcomes the obstacle he had previously lost to and is impressed. At that moment, the warrior ant succeeds in passing the trial of the rock. He will receive the blessing of the rock as a reward for clearing the first floor of the Tower of Heroes. Immediately afterward, he moves to the second floor, the Trial of the Wind. Similarly, he succeeds in this trial. Now back in God's room, he receives an offer of an annual salary of 3 million. If he likes it, he should go to the guild's headquarters with Kim Taman to sign the contract. Silence persists, and the man who made the offer asks what's wrong. The boy can't believe what he heard, because with 3 million he could write his own stories without worrying about bad people and eat whatever he wants. He could buy all the gifts for his beloved nephew. The mysterious man continues, saying that all rewards for hunting monsters will be split in a 7-to-3 ratio, and all the remaining money can be dedicated to his masterpiece, achieving success and finding a beautiful wife. Very seriously, the man making the offer asks if he's listening. The protagonist apologizes. His app triggers a target detected alert and shows a table about the man. He is the god of destruction. Thus, the boy realizes he was almost deceived. He tries to make an excuse, and when it seems like it won't work, it works perfectly. However, the large man says the guild leader ordered him to bring you along. The protagonist says he has a stomachache and asks to use the bathroom. Looking at himself in the mirror, he wonders what he's doing. The dark-haired boy remembers that the terrorist at the hospital was also a god of destruction. Then the protagonist considers calling the police, maybe. But with an explosion, the man bursts in, asking who he was going to call. Frightened, the boy realizes he's in big trouble. Revealing himself as a god of destruction, Kim Taman charges at Yushin. However, Taman wonders why they sent him there, as there are weaker targets. He says he will knock Yushin out and take him away. The boy is being suffocated by the man. As he's about to pass out, Kim wonders why the boy hasn't lost consciousness yet. Already very weak, the protagonist questions himself, knowing he must do something to stop him. In a moment of desperation, he calls upon the one and great god. God appears and grants him strength to help. Yushin manages to turn the tables and level the playing field. However, the man becomes disappointed, thinking it would be an easy mission. Filled with anger, the protagonist charges directly at Taman to strike him. However, Taman dodges. Then the boy lands a hit on Taman's nose, making it bleed and ultimately defeating him. The hero remembers he needs to call his friend Mary. However, the number he dials isn't answering. Entering the game, he finds Mary's location. On the other side, a rare type appears, the sword demon attacking Mary. Surprised, he rushes to her. Upon arriving, he sees the girl on the ground covered in blood. The sword demon, caught off guard, says he was just doing his job. In the end, both he and the athlete are surprised to see the man. The sword demon says he had to face many talented individuals to get there. He asks Yu if he's on the same side as the lightning pirates and wonders why Yu has furious eyes and a fruit-cutting knife. The sword demon then assumes a battle stance to strike the protagonist. Yushin manages to dodge and get behind his opponent. The sword demon questions whether he underestimated his opponent, but this time he goes all out and delivers a powerful blow. However, Yushin deflects the attack. The sword demon, in rage, unleashes a flurry of strikes. In the end, none of them affect Yu Ilshin. In a desperate attempt, the sword demon drinks a mysterious liquid. He declares that this time he'll end it with just one attack and charges at Yujin. After his attack fails, he realizes his sword has shattered. The boy charges toward the sword demon and hurls his knife at him. But something unexpected happens. His power runs out. Embarrassed, he tries to explain to the sword demon what happened. But the sword demon admits defeat. Surprisingly, the sword demon recognizes Yu Ilshin as the god of the sword. After the battle, the protagonist remembers the girl lying on the ground, nearly dying. However, the sword demon rushes to her aid and gives her a magical potion that restores her. He says the Lightning Empress will be fine once she reaches a safe place. He yells at the god of the sword to clean his sins. Yujin briefly reflects and thinks this guy was hired by a guild called Shin. Finally, he asks the sword demon if he would do anything and how strong he really is. He questions whether the sword demon is genuinely willing to do anything for him. The sword demon declares himself at his command. Jin then requests that he take care of his Shin guild for him. The demon is somewhat incredulous, not believing what was said. Then a window pops up in the app, asking if he wants to use the god's thumb ability for 100 coins to activate the skill. Shin wonders if it's a multiplication power that could make him money. He searches all his belongings for some cash but only finds 10 cents. Upon reading further, he realizes it only works with human blood, rendering it useless. He says he can't allow himself to be attacked and must win first. He must win. Then he asks the app, "What can I do to become stronger?" First, Infinite Abundance responds, saying he should think long-term. Second, Silent Nightmare remarks that it might take too much time and suggests doing something like a butcher shop instead. Finally, the sword that cuts everything agrees and recommends using the celestial sword, if possible, to make the slaughter more efficient. Shin reflects on which would be better and then decides to do both. He enters the god creator and explains that depending on how one plays, they can become either a good or evil god. The boy says he'll first multiply the ants using the god's thumb ability. He places his thumb on the screen and commands an army of millions to annihilate his enemies. Consequently, an army of millions of Gaiam empowered by the divine begins marching toward the enemy. The waiting time is 24 hours. The boy smiles at the screen, telling them to kill all his enemies. He wonders what is happening with the ants. They manage to use God's ring finger of healing, surprising him that they can utilize such an ability. Amid this discovery, someone calls him asking where the manuscript is, saying they fought hard to prevent the president from canceling his contract. Ilshin replies that he was delayed for personal reasons. The furious voice on the phone asks if he's crazy, noting he's already resting despite not having started the series. The protagonist wonders if he could use the multiplication finger on himself and thinks about having a clone. Having nothing to lose, he tries using it on himself. After activating the multiplication finger, a new version of him appears. The cooldown is 6,606 seconds. He's shocked to see that it worked. However, the clone is far more perfect and different from himself. After this, Yu instructs the clone to work on the manuscript. Surprisingly, the clone slaps him in the face. Ilshin doesn't quite understand what's happening and questions him. The clone immediately declares not to give him any orders. Then he punches the protagonist in the face, calling him a bastard and saying he feels much better after doing so. With the boy dazed and unconscious on the floor, the duplicate hears the phone ringing and asks author, "Who was that? Do you think I'll fall for that?" Immediately hangs up the call. Ilshin's clone starts rummaging through his phone. Accidentally, he equips the cruel assassin. After being teleported into the app, he finds himself facing 3 enormous monsters. The Ant Knights feel deeply intimidated. However, the clone descends from the heavens like lightning, surprising everyone. Then a message appears. The massacre elevates the cruel assassin to rank C. The monsters, now intimidated, look up and wonder if this is the spirit they heard of. The scene shifts to a table surrounded by various monsters. One of them says all their troops have been wiped out. In disbelief, a woman questions him, refusing to believe only an evil god could have done this. The man argues that the malevolent spirit they faced was a demon even without its appearance. The woman, without hesitation, finishes off the demon and demands they quickly inform Her Majesty. A mysterious character appears in the corner of the room. The woman demands they summon the War General and the 10 Swords immediately. However, one member at the table argues that if they do so, demons from other countries will attack them. The woman dismisses this concern, insisting they'd bring back the head of the evil god before Her Majesty returns. Meanwhile, on the other side, the mysterious figure apologizes for leaving without saying goodbye and for being rude this time. She said she'll personally retrieve the head of the evil god. On the other side, Ilshin wakes up again. He doesn't understand what happened, but soon remembers his clone attacked him and knocked him out. Picking up his phone, he notices over 121 missed calls and numerous messages. Reading the messages, he learns that if things continue as they are, his contract will soon be terminated. After checking his new status, he's stunned. He's gained several growing titles, received white and black coins, leveled up, and made various acquisitions. He wonders what the point of the game running smoothly now is and whether it's all the fault of this cursed game. Thanks to the successful spread of the White Ant Kingdom nomads, he's been promoted to bishop in the ancient temple. Afterward, numerous other details appear. Yu still doesn't understand any of it and grows furious, questioning why things are going so well in the game now, which makes no sense to him. The protagonist finds himself buried in various debts. In his room, he grabs his computer and begins his work as a writer. However, constant ads pop up from his game with a message asking if he would like to save the sword demon. The boy continues to ignore all these messages. To his surprise, he is transported directly to the perspective of the sword demon. On the other side, things aren't going well. The sword demon is chained before a girl. This girl is named Shelby. She is a member of the Shen clan. While holding his hair, she says that if he talks now, she will kill him without pain. Ilshin doesn't quite understand what's going on, but he realizes that the sword demon has been captured by the Shen Guild. In the moment of distraction, a new mysterious member appears. He seems to be someone much stronger than the others. His name is revealed to be Shieldo. The protagonist falls into a trance. The game allows him to enter the mind of his opponent. After that, various flashbacks occur, showing the sword demon's childhood. After awakening his Tai Chi powers, he carried out numerous assassination missions. On one such mission, he met Shelby and Shieldo, who raised him as a member of the Shen Guild. Naturally, they became his rivals. The woman asks if he was the top performer again this time and if he's also the favorite. She comments that he could never have normal dreams about his future like others. As he walks away, the swordsman tells the woman that if she's envious, she should work harder. He set out on a journey to become one with the sword, aiming to become stronger. In the end, his skill with the sword was as advanced as possible. He finally achieved his goal. However, he wonders if this is truly the end, as he feels mortified. Now in a kind of dungeon, the red-haired woman questions who ordered him to attack the brilliant guild. She also asks how he could betray his group. Without ceremony, the big guy arrives, saying traitors must be killed and suggesting they finish him off now. However, the woman says they'll get 100 million if they take him alive. Still, the bald man says he will kill her as well if she interrupts his work. Eyes closed, ready to face death, the man silently apologizes, addressing the god of the sword. Ready to kill him, the bald man warns that he will make the swordsman suffer as much as possible, living up to the title of Sword Demon. Seeing all this, the hero decides it's unacceptable. Determined, he tells himself he must save him, and to do so, he needs to use the steel body ability, requiring number one's muscles. Enraged, the bald man prepares to finish off the chained man, but the latter ends up punching the chain and breaking it. Surprised, the bald man shouts at the boy, questioning who he is and where he came from. Irritated, the boy replies that it doesn't matter and that he's a busy man. He immediately begins using Xiao Miri's ability, Lightning Tactic. He wonders if everyone will be annihilated with a single strike and calls himself a genius. However, he candidly admits that the ability limit has been reached and he can't use more than 2 strong abilities at the same time. Overloaded by the limit, he finds himself weakened. Seeing this, the bald man becomes even more enraged. Charging toward him, he asks if the boy is mocking him, but the protagonist manages to dodge. Despite dodging the punch, he ends up getting kicked in the head. However, the bald man is confused after kicking him, realizing the boy was using the thunder ability and ended up electrocuted. He collapses and the system announces that you managed to withstand the overload using the steel body ability. Worried, the woman runs toward her companion. Relieved, the hero thinks that somehow he managed to take down one of them. Crying and furious, the girl demands to know how he could do such a thing. She begins inhaling deeply to prepare for some kind of attack. Referencing Naruto, she launches a fireball jutsu-like attack at the hero. Nervously, as he sees the flames approaching, he wonders if this is how he'll die. However, the system notifies him that he can endure the flames using the steel body ability of number 1. He feels as if he's relaxing in a hot spring. After the attack, the woman starts panting heavily. Nervously, she wonders if she managed to defeat him. But when the smoke clears, she sees the boy still intact. He marvels, realizing that the steel body ability of number 1 is much stronger than he anticipated. Laughing, Yu says he's glad to know he leveled up. Launching another fire strike in his direction, the woman warns that she will turn the boy into ashes forever. As the flames cannot hurt him, he charges forward to counterattack. Being as gentle as possible, he only lands an open palm strike on her neck. At that exact moment, the time for using the iron body skill expires. Soon, the protagonist realizes that if he had trained a little less, he would have turned to ashes. Moreover, his skill and talent ended up blooming as a reward. At that, he wonders what his reward would be if, by chance, he could become a better writer. In the background, the prisoner only watches silently. In shock, the boy realizes he isn't achieving anything. Soon, he calls himself an idiot for expecting something good. In the background, the long-haired man calls upon the sword god, saying that he defeated the enemies with methods never seen before. At that moment, Yu ends up looking with fearful eyes. Both converse and decide to go home. However, they end up hearing some noise. It turns out to be someone clapping, saying that he was as incredible as expected. He states that he is delighted to meet him. Frightened, Yuma warns the sword god to be careful. Appearing naked, the long-haired man says they have finally met. This is Priest Yohan, a 29-year-old human man in charge of sacrificial rituals for the god of destruction. Upon seeing the man is naked, Yu thinks he's a pervert. Meanwhile, the man in front of him says it is an honor to meet him, calling him by his name. Reading his status, the protagonist is shocked, realizing he's a sacrifice. Then he thinks that no matter how you look at him, you can't see through him, so he needs to be careful. However, he considers him a wild pervert because he ends up looking in a strange way, blushing. The odd man says he is deeply moved and that his body is trembling. He can't believe he has finally met his brother Apostle. Placing a hand on his chest, the man interrupts him. He warns that he must not surround the sword god. Seeing this, Yohan didn't like it at all. Giving a strong slap with the back of his hand, he calls him an insect. Even though it's just a slap, it's enough to send him flying far away. However, he lands on the ground, breaking the soil. Seeing this, the hero thinks he can't believe the sword demon who defeated the Thunder Empress was brought down so easily. Curious, the odd man asks the protagonist whose apostle he is, in other words, which god he serves. Losing patience, he charges forward and calls him an idiot. While humans anticipate numerous abilities, he then chooses to use the lightning attack. At that moment, the odd man simply observes the lightning fist approaching his body. Meanwhile, an arachnid thinks it must forgive him for leaving without saying goodbye, because it will defeat all followers of the evil god. It claims that the fewer followers the god has, the weaker he will be. At the same time, in the Ant Kingdom, a man warns the children not to go into the forest. Looking to the side, he notices the presence of a giant monster. Seeing what it is, he is shocked. The demon in question asks if this is the village of the Black Tribe. Suddenly, he uses his poison ability, saying the Black Tribe will be poisoned to death. Releasing this poison, all the inhabitants begin coughing and feeling sick. It then states that this power of the evil god will weaken. Returning to the protagonist, he lands a solid punch on the odd man's face. The punch ends up being strong enough to send him flying away. and of course, because it was in an awkward position, it ends up being censored. Sighing in relief, he thinks that, as expected, whoever strikes first ends up winning. However, looking at the fallen man, he notices that he is moving. The man gets up immediately, as if he were some kind of zombie, which scares the protagonist. Using his lightning ability, he strikes multiple times to finish him off. After suffering multiple attacks, the man ends up falling to the ground. However, Battery gets up again and Yu realizes that the Thunder Empress's ability doesn't work on this guy. Seeing the man rise with his trembling body, he wonders why this pervert is immortal. Smiling, Johan states that it's useless. No matter how he is attacked, it won't work because his life cannot end. Initially, the boy understands that the time for powerful skills has already passed, and he also cannot use his lightning strike ability. On top of everything, his opponent will revive again. Analyzing the situation, Yu wonders if he will die meaninglessly. Then his opponent asks if that was all he had. With a disappointed expression, he says that Yu should entertain him more. Annoyed, the boy understands that he needs to hurry and think of something. Suddenly, he comes up with an idea. He then uses the god's multiplier thumb ability. Incessantly, his cocky clone appears with arms crossed. In the background, he realizes there's no way to carry out a mass killing with just one enemy. Impressed, the naked man says he can't believe Yu has an alter ego, and as expected, the boy is a genius. Hearing this, his arrogant clone turns to the protagonist. Sighing in anger, the clone says they have a problem. The redhead warns that the Aiga and Yami tribes are in danger and asks the original if he doesn't know that when the followers die, all of a god's power disappears. Deeply irritated with the greatest assassin, he grabs the attention of the two boys. Launching an attack, he asks if they are seriously ignoring him. The boy's alter ego manages to jump high to dodge. However, the original ends up being hit. He then wonders if he dies, what use will all this power have? At that moment, his clone calls out to Yu Ilshun. Then, he orders him to burn that bastard. Soon, he returns to his phone without thinking twice. Shaking in fear, the protagonist questions whether he simply disappeared. Still very irritated, Johan only calls out to his brother. Meanwhile, Yu wonders what his alter ego meant by burn him. Thinking hard, he tries to figure out what he can do. Then he remembers his ability using the middle finger. Smiling, he says that he has his own abilities too. At this moment, he uses the god's coordination ability, specifically using his middle finger. Seeing this, his opponent becomes confused while the protagonist charges at him with great anger. In an instant, the pervert's body ends up engulfed in flames. However, it was just an optical illusion as it's only a spark coming from his finger. Trembling, Yu thinks it's actually perfect if he wants to light a cigarette. Visibly disappointed, his opponent asks if that was his last trick. At that moment, Yu realizes he's in trouble, so he decides to use the multiplier to increase his firepower. Very nervous, he uses the multiplier ability as his last resort. Furious, he launches several small flames in the man's direction. Seeing their minimal impact, Johan simply laughs. After that, he says it's his turn to play now. Closing his eyes, the protagonist only realizes that this is the end for him and that his alter ego killed him like a fool. Tearing up, he thinks he never imagined his end would involve seeing the wild pervert. Suddenly, the man's attack is interrupted as he feels some pain in his ribs. Frightened, he wonders why his regeneration isn't working as he should be invincible. He then states that he is being consumed by the brutal artificial fire. Because of the burn on his rib, his opponent begins feeling very ill. Angry, he thinks it's due to this ridiculous ability. Before finishing his sentence, he launches some kind of image in the protagonist's direction. It makes him fall to his knees. Both are already exhausted from this battle. At the same time, the Black Tribe is being poisoned to death. With an apathetic look, the man poisoning them claims they should blame the evil god they serve. However, he ends up hearing something coming his way. He wonders what this feeling means. A man is approaching as if he were Superman. This is the protagonist's alter ego, also known as the evil god of the Ant Tribe. Then a butterfly-like creature calls him a dreadful and wicked god, saying his power will do nothing. At that moment, the redhead's fist begins growing in a terrifying manner. Seeing this enormous fist approaching, the man is simply confused. Soon, he is hit with full force and sent flying far away. In this case, the protagonist's alter ego also made an effort. Looking at the ground, he forgets that everyone is dead. Meanwhile, the protagonist is collapsing to the ground, saying it hurts a lot, and then he feels every bone in his body. The system then reports that the number of followers is rapidly decreasing. If the boy loses a large number of followers at once, he'll lose power too. With his entire body broken, Yu also gets irritated because the God Creator alarm won't stop ringing. A screen appears asking the protagonist if he wants to increase the number of believers by consuming 5,200,000 coins. He realizes he can do that using the god's healer Deba Meller ability. Surprised, he thinks that if he can do this, it's not just incredible, but invincible. Determined, he gets up to use the Deba Meller. From afar, his opponent watches curiously. When he does it, the system informs him that he consumed 10 million coins. Irritated, the protagonist wonders why it's much more expensive than increasing the number of followers. Opening a screen, the system asks if he wants to save the Ant Tribe using God's savior finger, and he clicks yes. At that moment, he earns 5,200,000 God's white coins for saving everyone in the Ant Tribe. Seeing all this, the perverted man starts to speak. Irritated, he begins masking his power, questioning how you can still stand. Seeing this attack, the boy just gets ready. Still annoyed by this duel, he uses the strong body ability. Then he shows the man his middle finger, calling him a perverted bastard. This is God's condemning middle finger. However, the man manages to dodge very quickly. He then lands right in front of Yu. Laughing, he claims that Yu truly is an incredible disciple and wonders how he confused him with a useless offering. Frightened, Yu tells him that it's already over, but the man says he will dedicate the 999 offerings he has. Pointing at the boy, he announces that Yu is the offering that surpasses the rank of disciples, being his final piece. A notification appears, questioning his decline as the god of destruction. Raising his hands to the sky, Johan thanks him for converting Yu into his final offering. Suddenly, something begins to emerge from the ceiling. A bizarre eye appears and looks directly at the hero and the villain below. The long-haired man starts smiling, while the protagonist trembles with fear. He decides he needs to stop him and uses God's index finger. However, the system warns him that this is an authority that doesn't work on the god of destruction, leaving the hero surprised. But the long-haired man himself begins to feel pain. Desperate, he says it's different from what was promised. Then the bizarre eye starts approaching using some kind of dark mist. The mist heads toward the hero. Closing his eyes, he thinks this is the end for him. At this moment, he wonders if it was all a dream. He also questions whether it was, in fact, an illusion. He was a strong god, benevolent and venerated by all. The great god who brings mountains. That was the true name of his blade that cuts everything. The god of destruction was betrayed by the abyss. He lost the maiden that the great god loved. And so, he lost the world. Before losing his own life, he saw that he was a god who sought peace. However, he has now transformed into the embodiment of vengeance. In some kind of nightmare realm, the protagonist stands before a gigantic statue. He realizes it's enormous and that it has come for him. He observes it with a determined look. It seems this bizarre eye wants to destroy something. Scared, the man says he must protect the sword god. But he can't move a finger because it's the first time he has felt so much fear and terror. Looking back, he calls out to the demon lord of the sword, and the man corrects him to sword god. With his muscular body, he simply says to calm down and watch how he will kill the god worshipped by that pervert. Suddenly, the man calls out to his lord. Wrapped in snakes, he says to his lord that this wasn't what he desired. Irritated, he questions how his lord can devour those who serve him, pleading for mercy. Watching everything without any feeling of guilt, the lord advises him to understand now that the god he worshipped was nothing but a fierce demon. Seeing the eye in question, he calls it a bastard demon. Irritated, he questions why it keeps staring at him. Then the emo man thinks that this same eye injured Lord Johan with just one glance. However, looking at the boy, he realizes he doesn't even speak. Suddenly, he sees the boy summoning some kind of insanely cool magic sword. He becomes amazed and excited by this. However, the demon doesn't seem to like this sword very much. With a serious tone, the protagonist speaks of the Sword Master authority. This authority granted him the celestial sword that cuts everything. It is an authority that brings out all the power and potential of the sword so that he and it become one. Seeing all this, the monster becomes completely enraged and loses control. Then the protagonist grabs this giant sword, preparing to strike him. He leaps very high toward the demon. Irritated, he speaks of destruction. With his muscular body, while holding the giant sword, he approaches the demon. With a monstrous air, he attacks it, questioning why it won't leave his world. This is Woon City, District 12, a deserted suburban area. Several soldiers are gathered. One of the men talks about an SS-level rift. From that, one of them says a monster capable of destroying an entire country might emerge from a rift of this level. Wearing an overcoat, one of the men asks what kind of demon passed through here. This is Hugh Kang-shiel, the director of the Hunter Association, who says they will probably have to start this project immediately. Suddenly, one of the soldiers calls the director, reporting that they have found a survivor. Surprised, the man wonders if someone managed to survive this attack. Approaching with a sense of urgency, he asks what demon passed through the area. However, he grows nervous upon seeing the survivor's condition. Seeing him, he orders his soldiers to call an ambulance immediately. Yuan appears to be in shock because of the demon that betrayed him. He remembers everything he saw while being bound by snakes. He saw the protagonist defeat the demon he had so devotedly worshipped. Witnessing such a feat, he begins to think that the boy is truly the god of all gods. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Sinon's older sister has just defeated a giant monster. Impressed, people comment that she killed the creature using only mind control and question how that's even possible. With arms crossed, her companion asks if it was really Henkes. He notes that dragons typically have particularly high resistance to specific abilities, yet she defeated this one so easily. Ignoring him and changing the subject entirely, she asks the redhead to hand over the teleportation stone. Handing over the stone, someone comments that she shouldn't ruin that beautiful face of hers. He mentions that just one of these stones cost 100 million won and questions whether it's truly necessary to use it in this situation. The woman is visibly irritated, as they said there would be a dragon, but it turned out to be just a weak creature, wasting her time. Sighing, her companion says that such an attitude is no different from that of tyrants. 2 days pass and the protagonist is with his niece at his home. The reason his niece is occupying her small hands with him is because of the effects of the celestial giant sword, which allowed him to fend off the monster. The protagonist's body is still battered because he had to use something he normally doesn't. Inside the apartment, that strange emo man has a very odd aura. The boy calls out to him. Putting his head to the ground, he ends up startling Yu. Nervous, Yu asks the emo if he's not going home and whether he managed to fix the bathroom door. In response, the man says he did, calling Yu the sword god. He then explains that he couldn't bear to see the house of the almighty sword god in ruins, acting as if he were some sort of follower. Concerned, Yu thinks that he talks like a fanatic. The hero then asks what happened to the homework he assigned him, believing he doesn't have time to just sit there. Arguing, the emo says there's no need to make any effort to clean up the remains of the guild. However, the boy doesn't know what he's talking about. The Hunter Special Action Force, led by rank as Seong Mina, is handling that now. He adds that the black market in Korea has effectively collapsed. Curious, the hero asks if he's talking about Seong Mina, the model who appears in TV commercials. Piecing things together, he begins to understand that Seong Mina and Seong Miri are likely sisters. Changing the subject, he tells his niece they're going to visit her mother right now. Worried about Seong, she starts considering the possibility of going to the hospital to heal him using her authority. The system notifies Yu that he managed to prevent the arrival of the unknown clones of the god of destruction on Earth, increasing his positive karma by 1 million. However, the boy connects the clone issue to the giant monster he had seen earlier and wonders if it's actually just one of 100 clones. Since this clone was already enormous, he questions how massive the Abyss Dragon must be. Suddenly, the system congratulates him, stating that he is now qualified for the promotion mission. First, he needs to gather 1 billion intelligent living followers or recruit 10 intelligent living beings ranked S or higher as followers. Additionally, he must accumulate negative karma by killing over 1 billion intelligent living beings or kill 10 intelligent beings ranked S or higher and steal their power. Nervous, the hero wonders if the system is telling him he needs to complete both missions. Irritated, he starts shouting, saying that if he has to do both simultaneously, the difficulty level is too high. Seeing his uncle looking worriedly at his phone, the child becomes confused. Reflecting on good and evil, she wonders if it wouldn't be a good idea to confront the pursuers of each faction. Trembling, the weak one is a genius, and the system is full of bastards saying they'll fight to the death. Sometime later, in front of room number 505, the hero is at the hospital, likely to visit Seong. He knocks on the door and asks Miri if she's there, and she shouts that he can come in. Not understanding anything, he opens the door while wondering why a patient's voice is so loud. At that moment, he finds the girl doing closed fist push-ups, looking perfectly healthy. Turning around, she catches the attention of the teacher while continuing her exercise. Excited, she asks if he came to visit her, saying it's thrilling, but the hero questions why someone so injured is acting like this. Awkwardly, the girl explains that she was a bit bored of sitting still and worried. He asks if her body is okay. Showing immense happiness and energy, Seong says she's fine and doesn't even have scars, asking the hero if he wants to see. Removing her bandage, she comments that there's nothing there, while the hero turns away, deeply embarrassed. Suddenly, Seong's older sister appears, asking if she's gone crazy. Deeply irritated, she approaches her younger sister and lands a strong slap on her back. Startled, Yu asks where this girl suddenly came from. With arms crossed after leaving the mark of her palm on her younger sister's back, she asks why Seong is doing this in front of a man. Exuding an aura, the assassin turns around and questions the boy, asking who he is. Grabbing him by the collar, she asks what his relationship is with her younger sister, and the hero thinks that she's not a normal person. Approaching the protagonist, she warns him that if he tries anything with her younger sister, he will die. Desperate, Seong calls her teacher, asking what he's doing, and irritated, her older sister asks if this guy who looks like a beggar is really a teacher. Suspicious, she removes her glasses and asks the girl if she's saying this is the kind of teacher they have at the Hunter Academy. Trying to explain, he says it's not what it seems. However, in the background, Hiroina whispers to him, saying he can't tell the truth. Stammering, he admits she's right and explains that he's the physical education teacher at the academy. Still skeptical, the older sister says she's never heard of that before. Continuing the interrogation, she asks the hero what his rank is and also comments that he doesn't look like much. But Seong tells her sister that she's being too harsh. Approaching the protagonist, placing a hand on his chest, says that their teacher Yu is an incredible person. He argues that although he doesn't know the worst and the young man's appearance is poor, he's much stronger than he seems and that she shouldn't think she can treat him however she likes. Removing her cap, the older sister asks if that's so. At that moment, the hero notices something strange. He realizes this is Seong Mina, the famous rank as Hunter. Irritated, she approaches her younger sister and asks if she's lost all sense of fear. Furthermore, she questions whether, just because she reached rank A, she thinks she no longer needs respect. Suddenly, she uses her mind control ability. While asking who is the strongest here, with her trembling body, Seong begins to admit she was mistaken. And then the older sister asks which hunter class this weak boy belongs to. Appearing using some sort of Byakugan-like ability, she orders her cow sister to kneel. She ends up obeying the order and by the looks of it, feels great pain in doing so. With an intimidating and imposing aura, she tells her younger sister that she only needs to do what she says. Suddenly, the hero intervenes in this mental battle. At that moment, he tells the woman she should calm down, as she might end up hurting the boy. Even more irritated, the woman begins shouting and cursing. Startled, you comments that her voice is stronger than it seems. Using her mind control ability again, she orders the hero to move and kneel, calling him a beggar bastard. Hearing this order, he only looks confused. Surprised, she wonders how the mind control didn't work. He then suggests it would be better for the siblings to resolve their problems through conversation. With an admiring look, Seong calls out to her teacher, saying she never imagined he could resist her sister's mind control without a primary ability. However, Hiro is surprised because he didn't know about this mind control. Somewhat apprehensive, the rank as Hunter decides to ask the protagonist what his rank is. But the rank hero wonders why she is asking such a shameful question. However, the woman notices something strange. Bowing, she apologizes for causing an incident due to her own ignorance. She then asks Professor Yu to take care of her younger sister in their future. Let's sanctify the day and mention that hospital food is disgusting, which is why she brought veal for the girl to eat. Seeing this, the protagonist thinks that this woman definitely takes good care of her little sister. This is Seon Min, a 24-year-old woman descended from the god of destruction and burdened by the curse of the abyss. The other information completely shocks the hero, leaving him unsure of what to do. Somewhat nervous, Yu asks if the woman is perhaps injured anywhere on her body. He then mentions the curse, explaining that it is harming her because of the abyss. At that moment, the woman begins to focus on him with a deeply terrifying and furious look, demanding to know how he knows about this. Completely frightened, he explains that it's a sensory ability he possesses, but admits he made some sort of mistake. Hearing his explanation, the girl begins to smile, saying it's all fine. Meanwhile, he wonders what kind of person she truly is. As she leaves, she tells Professor Yu that they'll meet again soon. Sweating nervously and stammering, he tells her to be careful. He thinks to himself that the pressure of a rank as hunter is absurd. Beyond her mental abilities being incredibly high, he can't even imagine how powerful her battle skills are. At that moment, Seong-min approaches, asking her teacher what he's thinking about. He realizes that he needs to convert people like her into his followers and concludes as expected it's going to be hell. He considers that he can't admit he's worried about her future or his own reality and decides to say what he usually does. Breaking the silence, he asks Miri if she minds him going up to the rooftop now. With a charming smile, she replies that she'd like that. Sometime later on the rooftop, he uses that tiger ability. Determined, the hero says he must use this ability one more time. This time, it's God's crushing index finger. He uses this ability repeatedly. As a result, he becomes exhausted and breathless. Worn out, he comments that he thought this would be an opportunity to grow after the last incident and that it would be much easier, but he's failing. His strength is slowly returning and he wonders if it's truly so difficult to understand himself. He concludes that his method is flawed in some way and asks Seong if she can come over for a moment. Suddenly, a system screen appears before him. The girl is right in front of his skill description screen. Panting, the boy mutters that he needs patience and must focus all his neurons on this. Seeing her teacher staring so intently, the girl feels embarrassed and confused at the same time. He remains very determined, affirming to himself that he must concentrate on this as if threading a needle. Suddenly, something appears on the screen. Surprised, he wonders if this is why he couldn't unlock it, while Seong, still confused, asks her teacher what he's talking about. The hero then asks Miri if she knows where her sister went, and she questions why he wants to know. With a mischievous smile, he thinks to himself that he's going to have a very honest consultation with her sister. Meanwhile, elsewhere, someone tells their apostle not to worry. They explain that when they arrived alive in this world, they received salvation. They say it's like a miracle from God, who listened when they were losing hope in life. This is Johan, now aged, saying that everything was a lie and that salvation was the only reason his body and mind survived. Crying, he recalls that he believed in God fanatically and considered it an honor to be part of him. At that moment, he begins to remember his traumatic experience with the God he once worshipped. Screaming, he declares that it's simply demonic and not what he wanted. However, he begins to recall the protagonist telling him he's different. The one true God, the God of gods. Looking out the window, he gently asks for this world to receive salvation thanks to him. On his knees, he begs for forgiveness. He asks to be allowed to follow the great and honorable Yu Shin as a humble servant. Suddenly, the old man hears a noise. A screen appears, informing him that Johan has developed faith in Yu Shin, causing his body to tremble. Crying, Johan thanks him for accepting this lost and sinful follower. Suddenly, someone appears inside his cell, asking about Yu Shin. Wearing a plague doctor mask and with a very ominous look, they ask if he mentioned that name. Striking Johan, they demand to know how he got there. They think nothing should be able to enter this place unless it's S-class. Then they say it seems the officials of the association have abandoned him. In his mind, Johan wonders who this person is. He acknowledges that he has killed many people and questions if this decision was made to silence public opinion. He declares that he is no longer an apostle of evil, though he is capable of killing. Sighing, the mysterious figure says that he too hasn't reached the abyss. Using some kind of ability, they state that regardless, they cannot forgive anyone who intentionally tried to kill Brother Mary. At that moment, something happens to Johan's heart. The old man collapses his knees, feeling immense pain. All of this takes place inside a prison. Meanwhile, the protagonist feels uneasy, saying that it seems he'll never have the chance to meet Mina and wonders why she's so busy. However, he assumes it must be difficult for a celebrity to have time. Opening a crumpled letter, he thinks that the Master of Swords has finally gone home and hopes he doesn't return. Picking up his phone, the notification grabs his attention. The system informs him that the human Johan has converted to the Order of Yushin under the God of Destruction, being considered a fanatic. This, of course, leaves the protagonist extremely confused. In doing so, he managed to convert 5 million common followers and 1 S-class follower. Surprised, he comments that this should be beyond S-class, that he doesn't understand what's going on, but it's like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, which is perfect. He mentions that the Master of Swords has left and now he has an S-class follower, wondering what happened to Johan. At that moment, he receives another message. It notifies him that Johan, the fanatic follower of Yushin, has died, leaving the protagonist in shock. It states that everything a fanatic possesses is the property of God, and that the sacrifice will be absorbed. Suddenly, the system enters alert mode, issuing a warning to the hero and explains that absorbing the sacrifice may cause unbearable pain. After this message, something begins to emerge from his phone. It's an energy that hits the boy, causing him to scream in pain. This energy is so powerful that it lights up the entire room. Still startled, he wonders if he just absorbed Johan's ability. Looking at his hands, he questions whether when a fanatic dies, he continues absorbing their abilities. Staring at his phone, he wonders how Johan died and if he's truly gone. Searching the internet, he sees that the death of Johan, the black market beer, has been announced. Uncertain, he doesn't know if he feels worried or relieved, but the mission's progress remains unchanged. Additionally, he still has Johan's ability. Lying silently on his bed, he sighs, realizing this is useful information he didn't expect. Still, he wonders what made Johan become a fanatic. Confused, he recalls that Johan died of a heart attack but still managed to keep his progress, and he wonders if he should feel happy because there's one less follower of the god of destruction alive. Overwhelmed, he says he doesn't understand and doesn't know what to think about it. He decides not to think about it anymore, reasoning that everything is already over anyway. Johan could do anything with the authorities he had now, and beyond that, he could become a hunter, earning money and glory, but Yu asserts that that's not what he truly wants. Looking at his laptop, he affirms that, in truth, he's a writer, even though he's a third-rate writer without any major works. The boy always gets the best results when he's motivated. A few hours pass, and the protagonist comments that he should pay close attention to himself since he just uploaded 10 chapters at once. Since everything is based on his experience, it should be interesting. He also notes that this should attract more fanatics, so he decides to check the comment section. However, as he begins reading, he's shocked. One person says this writer is stupid, while another comments that the ants are poor creatures and shouldn't be killed. Reading all the negative comments, the hero becomes demotivated. He mutters that they're demons and should find a different line of work. Hearing a knock at the door, he asks who it is and whether it's the Master of Swords. Irritated, he starts rolling up his sleeves, calling the visitor an idiot and swearing he's going to say something. Opening the door in a rage, he declares he's going to kill whoever it is. However, it's Sion, looking worried and calling for her teacher. At that exact moment, she collapses to her knees. Visibly concerned, Sion calls for her teacher and asks if she can request a very difficult favor. Seeing the bright eyes of his student, Yu wonders how he could possibly refuse her. In truth, he knows no human could say no in such a situation. Embarrassed, he agrees to hear what she has to say. At that moment, the system notifies him that the faith of the Earth Apostle Seongmiri has increased by 10. However, he begins to worry about what kind of favor she wants to ask. The next day at Hunter Academy, the favor turns out to be Seongmiri asking him to be her tutor in place of her sister. He wonders why her sister didn't come instead, but quickly recalls her fiery temperament. He understands that the girl's increased faith wasn't for nothing. Changing the subject, Seong comments to him that he looks great in a suit and asks why he doesn't always dress like that. However, he responds that he only owns one suit. Excited, the girl says she has plenty of money and can buy something for him since they have the most genius teacher in the world. Hearing her say this, Yu feels a bit flustered. Annoyed, he concludes that somehow Mary's tendencies are leaning toward the same kind of fanaticism as Auntie's. Quickening his pace, Yu says they need to hurry, otherwise they'll be late for the meeting. Inside the academy, one of the men asks what his relationship with Miri is. Quickly, she replies that he's her cousin. Staring at Yu, the man comments that her cousin doesn't look anything like her. Embarrassing her further, he remarks that they are in no way similar. Frustrated, the protagonist thinks her lie was as obvious as expected. At this moment, the system reveals that this man is Lee Kyung-ki, a 33-year-old with a muscular build. Irritated, Seong tells the man to take back what he said about her oppa being ugly, but the man says he never said that. Later, he apologizes for his rude behavior and explains that he thought Seong Mina would be coming. Changing the subject, he asks if the hero is also a hunter, suggesting he must have a lot of talent since he shares the same blood as Miri. Yu argues that he's just a normal person. After the discussion in the director's office, an old man with crossed arms looks somewhat impatient. With a serious expression, he thinks it has been a long time. He recalls when the portal to another world appeared in the middle of the city, bringing with it a demonic ogre that could destroy all of Korea. Desperate, one of the soldiers asked if there was anything they could do about it, lamenting that they lived on a planet where hunters could do nothing. Paying close attention, the old man noticed the presence of the Division D commander. The man stood face to face with the ogre. His fist was enveloped in some kind of powerful energy, and he delivered a direct punch to the ogre's face. The impact of the punch was so strong it created a gust of wind. The punch was powerful enough to defeat the demonic ogre. People were shocked that Chowder managed to take down the S-rank demonic ogre Monsiburano with a single punch. They remarked that they had never seen this hunter before and speculated that he must be S-rank if he was this strong. The commander sighed, saying he had tried to live a peaceful life, but because of this bastard, his entire world fell apart, and it was then that people began calling him the Sweeper. However, he added that he was now too old for this and needed to dig deep within the academy to discover and nurture new talent, which was now his duty. Still, the biggest problem at the academy was Seongmiri. Despite her dramatic life, only the higher ranks of the association knew she was quite spoiled and that it was crucial to help her grow properly. Laughing, the director remarked that in today's meeting, he would address this correctly and come to a resolution. Returning to the protagonist, the man was surprised to learn that he was a writer. The hero felt somewhat relieved. On their way to the meeting, the man mentioned he liked reading and asked what Yu was working on. Yu explained that he was writing a story about raising an ant with a phone, featuring a muscular, saintly ant and so on. Hearing the term muscular ant, the man was intrigued. Finally, they arrived at the director's office. Knocking on the door, the man announced that Seongmiri and her tutor had arrived. The old man allowed them to enter, and nervously, Yu began adjusting his tie. Upon entering the room, he bowed and greeted the director, explaining that he was Song Miri's cousin and had come as her tutor. Confused, he said he didn't know what Miri had done wrong. The old man laughed, saying she hadn't done anything wrong. However, as they look at each other's faces, both are startled. Staring at the old man, you realizes that this guy is the drunkard from before. He exclaims that it's definitely S-rank hunter Choi Kang-san, also known as the Sweeper. Equally nervous, the old man recognizes you as the boy who used that plant ability earlier. However, he begins to deny reality, muttering that there's no way this guy could be here. Breaking the silence, Yu asks if he's the drunkard from before and says he's happy to meet him again like this. Looking away, he notices the drunkard in shock and apologizes, saying he's just glad to see a familiar face. The old man looks irritated and ready to fight while Yu sighs, wondering why he's acting like this. Intervening in the brewing fight, Miri asks what's going on, but the director tells her she doesn't know anything and should stay quiet. Adding a cold remark,
I think you kinda like this video, so just subscribe and like.